Pero pues aquí pues ya los enseñan un poquito más cosas que uno no sabía, como cómo cuidarla, cómo desarrollarla, cómo educarla, y pues es algo bien porque pues cosas que yo no sabía pues ya usted nos las dijo y todo como consejos, y pues muchas cosas que se aprendieron.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia, sino más bien un programa de estado programado para la ayuda solamente. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia con nosotros, porque nos apoya en los momentos difíciles o cuando nos hemos visto en dificultades. Siempre nos hemos podido apoyar en Gaby a través de su programa. Encuentro que ha sido fundamental el apoyo.
You know, my experience has been nothing but positive. Annette has been wonderful. She's on time. She lets me know if there's going to be any changes in the schedule.
Not only did we get the assistance with this program, but we also made a really good friend. I'm happy to call Gabby our friend.
I still feel the challenge of being a parent now in today's world is immense. I think that you need support.
Es un gran apoyo para nuevos padres, y más aún si están en nuestra situación, que somos extranjeros, que nuestra familia y amigos, como dice Carla, están en otro país, lejos. Entonces sí, viene muy bien el programa para apoyarse tanto emocional y como anímicamente, y bueno, en varios aspectos del programa, que nos ayuda a seguir adelante con esta nueva aventura.
Don't be afraid to take that step. Like, don't be afraid to get help, because you might think that you know what you're doing, but it's always okay to have extra support, and don't do it alone.
Give it a try. You got nothing to lose. It's free. I'm grateful that I took advantage, because it's something that has put me in touch with my child, or closer to my child and her development.
Are you prepared? We're the Office of Emergency Services, and we're committed to providing the most up-to-date and accurate information so that you and your family can stay safe during an emergency. Visit MendoReady.org. It's our one-stop shop for emergency information. You can sign up for emergency alerts, find your pre-established evacuation zone on our current emergencies map, and find hazard and preparedness information.
Imagine you're faced with a disaster such as a wildfire, and you're ordered to evacuate. I'll bet you wish you had more time in that moment. Now's your chance to buy yourself that time. Sign up for Nixle and Mendo Alerts on our website, mendoready.org. Do it today.
If you want your family to be as resilient as possible, it's important to take some time today and visit mendoready.org, where you can look up your pre-established evacuation zones on our current emergencies map. You can also find important tools to help maintain your situational awareness, such as the Alert California wildfire cameras and the Caltrans road conditions cameras. We hope you'll take some time today to prepare so that your family can be Mendo ready. Thank you.
Mendocino County Planning Commission, December 7th, 2023 meeting is called to order, and I would like to talk about this as a hybrid meeting, and I'm going to read from how anybody trying to reach us can do so also digitally or virtually. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting. of the Planning Commission with participants both in person and digitally. The public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to PBS commissions at mendocinocounty.gov or orally via telecomment in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made available to the commissioners, staff, and the general public after processing by staff and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting's agenda on the Planning Commission agenda page. To submit comments via telecomment, please use the telecomment form found at www.mendocinocounty.gov/government/planning-building-services/meeting-agendas. And may we have roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Babini,
Here.
Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Purnell, Commissioner Pollan,
Here.
Chair Wiedemann.
Here. All right. And do we have determination of legal notice?
All matters on the agenda have been properly noticed.
Thank you. And item number 3, may we have the director's report?
Thank you. Good morning. Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director. Just a brief report for the commission today. I don't believe it's been a couple meetings since I've been able to attend, and I don't believe I've had the opportunity to announce that we do have a new assistant director with our office. John Burks is the assistant director for Planning and Building Services, so you may be seeing him in the future at various meetings, and we're excited to have him. He's an excellent resource to our department and to our staff overall, and I'm excited to have him share some of the load with me over at Planning and Building. So that concludes my director's report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. And maybe one day we'll meet John Burke. Okay, thank you. Does any commissioner have any questions for the director?
Do we have any update on the zoning?
Thank you. Yes. So the Inland Zoning Code update, we've just wrapped up our edits on this second round, and I'm expecting that will, provided that the consultant is able to work on that through the next couple months, we're hoping to come forward to the commission, I would guess sometime between March and April, but ideally I'm hoping in March.
All right, thank you. Item number 4 on the agenda, matters from the public expression. Members of the public are welcome to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is prohibited by law from taking action on matters not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission under matters from the public may do so via email or Zoom. For information on each of these methods, call the Planning and Building Department at 707-234-6650 or visit www.mendocinocounty.gov/planning-building-services/meeting-agendas. All correspondence will be attached to the item and made available online on the Planning Commission agenda page. If any members of the public logged into Zoom meetings wish to speak under the public expression and have not completed the telecomment form, please use the raise hand feature to allow the staff to add you to the meeting. And do we have any requests for public comment?
I did not receive any telecomment forms.
All right. Seeing that there is none, is there any member of the public in the room wish to speak under public expression? Would you come up to the microphone and introduce yourself, state your name, please?
My name is Tom Rawls, and is it time to talk about the Fazing Corporation project? Not yet.
Not yet. Thank you. Is there anybody else for any public expression other than what's on the agenda? All right.
Just for the record, there is no one on Zoom for public comment as well.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, consent calendar. The Planning Commission minutes for November 16, 2023. Are there any revisions or comments regarding those minutes? Seeing none, I'm going to open public comment. Is there any public comment on the minutes of November 16, 2023? Seeing none, I'm going to invite a motion. Commissioner Pollan?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Commissioner Babini?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Babini,
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Right? Thank you. We move on to item number 6A on the agenda, and it's our regular calendar. And case number UM 2020-0006, Cold Creek Compost, Martin, Millick. It's a use permit modification to number U 26-93/2009 to allow for the expansion of operations at an existing compost site. The expansion request consists of grading of an adjacent 7.2 acre area for storage of finished compost, the development of an 8.4 acre storm water pond, and an increase to the allowable annual tonnage received from 50,000 to 70,000 tons. And this item has been postponed to another timeline, and I'm going to open the public hearing. And if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to address this, who's here to address this item, the Cold Creek Compost.
Pardon me, Chair Wiedemann. My suggestion would be, since the item is requested to be continued and we're not receiving a presentation regarding the item from staff, that actually we would postpone any public comment on the item until that future hearing date, which would be noticed.
All right.
And the Deputy County Counsel, Matthew Kudrowski, it is just a request for continuance. So that the staff
Yes,
hasn't
it is a
postponed
request for
it. It was
continuance.
noticed, so
Okay.
we would do it on open. The item can be opened if the Commission wants to hear a presentation now. We can, but I think the staff would desire to postpone that, and it's at the discretion of the Commission to hear any comment.
Correct. I think the issue was if anybody drove here and didn't know it was postponed, it would be a courtesy to let them speak. Is there anybody in the audience who is here to speak to the Cold Creek Compost? I didn't, would you come up to the mic and state your name and?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to make comments.
Yes.
I'll make them briefly. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Philip A. Williams. I represent a number of clients who are concerned about the operations at Cold Creek Commons, both as currently existing and as was proposed in the item that has just been continued. We really appreciate the fact that staff have continued the item from today's consideration. This course is entirely prudent, and I hope that we will stay that course, and it will provide us all some time to better understand the impacts to any proposed changes to Cold Creek Compost operations, but also to better understand the impacts of its current operations. The changes that had been proposed for your consideration raised some serious questions that I believe expose the county to legal liability, and I am eager to avoid that conflict, as are my clients. But the use of an addendum for CEQA purposes was highly questionable, given the significant changes to the project description, including grading an additional 7 acres, increasing annual allowable tonnage of compost by 40%, 6 to 10 new daily truck trips, development of an 8-acre lined containment pond, and an on-stream 45-acre reservoir, none of which had been additionally analyzed in the documents that were before you. This aside from the fact that we had not heard much, if anything, from the many responsible agencies, including Environmental Health, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, Air Quality Management District, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. In addition, it was impossible to understand whether currently imposed mitigation measures were either being performed or, in fact, adequate. All of this deserves our additional and thoughtful attention if we are to avoid conflict. Today's action with staff acknowledging that we need additional information on the project as is and as proposed to be changed is a welcome step in the right direction. I want to thank your staff for their attention to our concerns that we've raised and for their continued commitment to getting this right. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for your consideration and for your service. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have now or in the future, and look forward to continuing to engage on this.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else in the audience here to speak to this issue that's being postponed? Seeing none, I will then close the public hearing on the case number UM 2020-006, as it will be continued at a future agenda.
Excuse me, Chair, just Deputy County Counsel Matthew
Yes,
Kudrowski.
could you
Can we
speak up?
Can we get a motion for the continuance to a date uncertain, please?
Sure.
And a vote.
Do I have a motion, Commissioner Pabini?
Yes, I make a motion to postpone this item to a date uncertain.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Commissioner Pollan seconds it.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Babini,
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And we have now moved it on to a future meeting. Thank you for your concern and time in. Moving to agenda item number 6B on our regular calendar, case U 2021-0016 and V-2020 and V underline 2021-0005. Bayesian Corporation and 898 Main Street LLC. Minor use permit to establish and operate a gas station with 10 gas pumps, 2 separate illuminated canopies, 28 new parking spaces, landscaping, and convert part of an existing structure to a convenience store. A concurrent variance is requested for a 65-foot tall business identification sign. I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there any correspondence via telecom comment or telephone calls?
All items have been posted to the website that have been received.
Okay, thank you. And therefore now I'll go to staff presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. This is Liam Crowley, staff planner for this project. I have a presentation for you that I've shared on the screen here. So as was stated, this is a minor use permit and variance. The owner applicant is Faison Corporation and Main Street LLC.
Excuse me, you're going to have to speak louder
Okay.
and closer into your mic.
Sorry. Make this a little better. Okay. All right, some background about this project and general property information. So the general plan classification for this property is commercial. The zoning district is limited commercial, C1. The total acreage of the property is approximately 2.54 acres, plus or minus. I did want to note that a similar project was approved on this property in 2016. It was also a use permit and concurrent variance. And that project included a 3,000 square foot office/convenience store. It included a gas station with 6 fueling pumps under a 4,000 square foot canopy. It included a 30,000 gallon underground fuel storage tank, parking waiver, and a setback variance. And the staff report for that previously approved use permit and variance is attached as attachment M in the packet for today's item. So I just wanted to make note of that. Now, as far as the description of the project before you today, it includes a proposed 10-pump gas station under 2 separate illuminated canopies. The canopies would be 3,870 and 2,250 square feet in size. There would be 28 new parking spaces, landscaping, a conversion of a portion of an existing commercial structure on the property to a convenience store, 2 freestanding signs, 1 fuel price sign that would be approximately 30 feet tall and 155 square feet in area, and a business identification sign that would be approximately 65 feet tall and 584 square feet in size. In addition, there would be several underground fuel storage tanks and driveways connecting to North State Street. So this photo on the right is just a photo of the project site with the existing commercial structure on the right, and the actual fueling canopies would be located towards the left of the picture and also off screen to the left. Here's a site plan of the proposed project. So I'll just go through all the features I mentioned earlier and note them on the site plan. Hopefully, yeah, you can see my cursor here. So as I mentioned, there would be several new parking spaces in the rear of the commercial structure around here, and other new parking spaces here to the east of the fueling canopies. As I mentioned, a portion of this existing commercial structure would be converted to a convenience store. Currently, the commercial structure is a multi-tenant structure that has multiple businesses operating within it. There's an existing restaurant to the east of this structure as well. You can see the fueling canopies here and the underground storage tank adjacent to them, as well as the landscaped areas and the new driveways that are proposed. I did also just want to note, when looking at this, you can see that these fueling canopies do extend fairly close to the front property line, and you can actually see on the site plan the noted 20-foot front yard setback line, and of course these canopies do encroach into that setback line, and I'll discuss that a little bit further later on in the presentation. And I also did just want to note that as proposed in this site plan, the driveways do not meet the County Department of Transportation standards for commercial driveway approaches, and I'll also address that a little bit later in the presentation. So moving on to some of the key issues regarding the project. So of course, more detail is included in the written staff report and the materials that are attached on the website, but I'd like to just go over a few key components. So as I mentioned, the actual fueling canopies would encroach into the yard setbacks. There is a 20-foot front yard setback requirement for this zoning district. And therefore, staff reviewed the project to determine whether a variance was warranted for a reduction in the setback. And like I said, I'll discuss that a little bit later. County Code Chapter 20.184 regulates freestanding signs. As I mentioned, there are 2 freestanding signs proposed for this project. Both of these proposed signs are higher than the 25-foot limit that's outlined in the code, and they're greater than the 64 square foot area limit for freestanding signs. However, section 20.184.045 of the County Code allows the Planning Commission to grant variances with respect to sign height and area. And again, this determination as to whether such variances are warranted for the proposed signs will be discussed later on in the presentation. And this image to the right is just an example taken from the application materials for one of the freestanding signs, the fuel price sign. For environmental impacts, a mitigated negative declaration was prepared for this project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. Several potential impacts were identified which could be mitigated to less than significant levels, and the contemplated mitigation measures are included as conditions of approval. However, I would just like to highlight 4 areas in particular: aesthetics, air quality, transportation, and hazardous materials. So for air quality, I wanted to note that gasoline vapors are released when storage tanks are filled with gas and dispensed into vehicles as part of a gas station project. The Mendocino Air Quality Management District requires that gas station owners install vapor recovery equipment to prevent vapors from being released. And this requirement is included as a mitigation measure and a condition of approval for this proposed project. I'll go over transportation impacts in more detail later on in the presentation. But as I mentioned earlier, large underground storage tanks would be installed as part of this project to store gasoline. Gasoline, of course, is considered a hazardous material, and the Mendocino County Environmental Health Division is responsible for enforcing California's Underground Storage Tank Act. And additionally, the Division of Environmental Health issues permits for the installation of underground storage tanks. Certain conditions must be met and several inspections occur, as I'm aware, to ensure that the accidental release of these hazardous materials are either avoided or mitigated. And this requirement to obtain the necessary permits through environmental health is included as a condition of approval. Okay, moving on. So as for the setback variance that I mentioned earlier, a similar variance for a reduction in setback was approved as part of the previous project at this location, as I had mentioned. And per Chapter 20.200 of the County Code, variances may only be approved if five specified findings can be made. And I'll go ahead and read those out here for the benefit of everyone. The first is that there are special circumstances applicable to the property involved, including size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings. The second is that such special circumstances or conditions are not due to any action of the applicant subsequent to the application of the zoning regulations contained in the division. The third is that such variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other property in the same vicinity and zone and denied to the property in question. The fourth is that the granting of such variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such vicinity and zone in which the property is located. And the last is that the granting of such variance will not adversely affect the general plan. So the variance that was previously approved in 2016 was to allow a 2-foot front yard setback where 20 feet is required. So as for the first finding, with staff's review, it was found that two main factors allow this finding to be made. I'll go ahead and go back to the site plan to illustrate this a little bit better. You'll see here that a 50-foot easement and a 40-foot easement are located on the property. Right here, you'll see them noted, and these dashed lines indicate where these easements run through the property. These easements constrain the buildable area, and it was noted in the staff report for the previously approved variance that the owner attempted to purchase these easements in order to eliminate this constraint without success. And staff finds that this is a sufficient special circumstance to make this first finding. You can see that with these easements, together with the 20-foot front yard setback line significantly constrain the ability to build the proposed fueling canopies. So this circumstance itself was not caused by any action of the applicant because these easements existed prior to the applicant's acquisition of the property. And as I had mentioned, it appears that the applicant attempted to purchase these easements without success. In this case, staff did find that a substantial property right would be denied to the owner without this variance because, as I mentioned, the C1 zoning regulations allow for development of a gas station upon issuance of a minor use permit, and the existing easements constrain the property in a way that would deny the ability to construct a reasonably sized gas station. It appeared that the only other kind of potential location for fueling canopies of this size would be actually behind the convenience store, which would not be feasible, of course. Oh, yes, and then I've summarized the language of finding D that I read out earlier, just using the word nuisance. Granting this variance is not expected to be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in this vicinity and zone because the recommended conditions of approval would reduce potential impacts imposed by granting of the setback variance. For example, any potential traffic conflicts arising specifically due to the placement of the canopies closer to the property line would be sufficiently ameliorated by DOT's recommended conditions of approval regarding the size of the driveways and providing circulation plans showing the ability of large trucks to make turning movements in and out of the site. And granting of the variance is not expected to adversely affect the general plan, and that's discussed further in the staff report. And therefore, staff is recommending granting this setback variance to reduce the required setback from 20 feet to 2 feet. Now, as for the height of the sign variance, staff did also find that there was a special circumstance in this case. And the reasoning behind that was that when traveling southbound on US 101, the site does appear to be obscured by the highway gradient until about 1,000 feet northwest of the intersection with North State Street. And this creates a special circumstance because other commercial properties in Redwood Valley and further south along US 1 are not obscured in this way. And the highway grade did exist prior to the applicant's acquisition of the property. So I'll move forward a little bit and just make note of these street views from Google Maps. And you'll see on the right, there's an aerial image embedded into this photo. And this gray dot right here represents where the street view to the left is being taken from. So you can see that this dot here is parallel with this dirt road right here. And you'll see the project site to the west. I can't move my cursor that far, but and then you'll see the project site noted here, and this small white dot is one of the existing freestanding signs that's on the property. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see we've moved a little bit further back on the highway. You can see we were previously parallel to this road here. And you can see now that the site itself is obscured by the highway grade. So staff did feel that a special circumstance did occur in this case. However, staff does not view the ability to construct a 60-foot tall sign exceeding the required 25-foot height limit to be a substantial property right with regard to the third finding that must be made. And the reasoning behind this is that generally the ability to construct a 25-foot tall sign may be considered a substantial property right, but that is not being denied to the property in this case. They're requesting a 65-foot tall sign. And the sign regulations apply uniformly throughout the county regardless of the location. So a variance in this case is not necessary to preserve the right of the applicant to construct a sign, and a 65-foot tall sign is not necessary in this case. So therefore, staff is recommending denial of the 65-foot tall sign variance. And the last variance that's contemplated is a variance to allow a larger sign area. And again, the same special circumstances I noted earlier apply in this case. And additionally, as I mentioned before, the site contains a multi-tenant commercial building with 6 leased spaces. And this is actually, staff found this to be unusual for the vicinity of this project where single-use commercial lots are typical. And again, these conditions existed prior to the applicant's acquisition of the property. So this multi-tenant commercial building contributed to the finding that there's a special circumstance in this case. And staff found that the ability to construct a reasonably sized signs for each tenant within this commercial structure would be denied without this variance. If the sign regulations were to be enforced on their face, the site would be permitted to construct signs that amount only to a maximum of 128 square feet in size. that's a combination of either freestanding signs or wall-mounted signs or roof-mounted signs. And staff does not consider this to be a sufficient area to fairly advertise each business that's within this multi-tenant commercial structure. It's clear that a significant number of customers may visit these businesses when traveling along US 101 at high speeds, and a smaller sign with presumably smaller lettering would be difficult to see when traveling at high speeds along Highway 101. So therefore, a larger sign that consolidates the multiple businesses within this structure onto one sign would allow a reasonable advertisement to highway customers while reducing visual impacts by reducing clutter with associated with multiple separate signs. And I did just want to note, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but there are several existing freestanding signs on the project site for the multiple different businesses within that commercial structure. And the proposal, as proposed by the applicant, would be to essentially include a larger sign that has spaces for each business to be located on a single sign. So it was found that this increased sign area would not adversely affect the general plan, particularly if multiple businesses were consolidated onto the single sign. And that's also discussed further in the staff report. And therefore, staff is recommending approval of an increased sign area for this property. However, the question then becomes, what is an appropriate total increased sign area? And to answer this, staff simply multiplied the maximum area for a freestanding sign, which is 64 square feet, by 6, which is the number of tenant spaces within the existing commercial structure. And then we added 128 square feet to account for the maximum total sign area allowable on the parcel to the west that includes the restaurant. So therefore, staff is recommending that the commission grant a sign variance to allow the total maximum sign area to be 512 square feet as opposed to 128 square feet for this property. And I did also just want to note that a condition of approval is recommended that would require the applicant to submit a final signage plan that inventories all existing signs on the site and proposed signs, ensuring that they will not exceed this 512 square foot limit, and that they will conform to the other signage requirements in the county code. Moving on to transportation impacts. So as part of the previous project on this site, a traffic study was required to analyze the potential transportation impacts. And though this study concluded that less than significant impacts would occur, the previous use permit contained conditions of approval requiring the applicant to pursue an ordinance amendment restricting left turn and through movements at the North State Street / Yuva Drive intersection. And that intersection is shown here in this photo on the right. And I'll go over the actual intersection a little bit further, a little bit later. Likewise, the current project is expected to result in transportation impacts. When the project was referred to the Department of Transportation, they recommended several conditions of approval to reduce such impacts. I won't go into details on these, but I'll just list them out. They include obtaining the necessary encroachment permits, submitting a circulation plan for fuel truck turning movements that I discussed earlier, submittal of documentation of access easements to show that access is available from neighboring parcels through the site, submittal of a site plan for a properly designed culvert or swale for the driveway approaches, and post-construction drainage, signing and striping requirements to account for potentially restricted turning movements. And DOT also recommended the same requirement that an ordinance amendment be obtained to restrict turning movements at this intersection. So I guess at this point I'll go to the next slide and just kind of discuss this intersection a little bit further. So what I mean when I say restricting turning movements, so the previous project was conditioned to require the applicant to obtain an ordinance amendment with the Board of Supervisors to restrict left turning movements from North State Street and Yuva Drive onto the highway. So currently, motorists can, if they're traveling, I guess I'll use my cursor here along North State Street, they can make a left onto southbound Highway 101, or if people are coming from Yuva Drive, they can make a left onto northbound US 101 here. And so that condition from the previous project for the ordinance amendment would restrict these movements, but they would not restrict folks from who are traveling southbound on US 101 to make a left turn into the site onto North State Street, and they would not restrict people traveling northbound on US 101 to make a left onto Yuva Drive here. So that was what was required as part of the previously approved project. And so so after discussion for this current project, after discussion between the applicant, staff, DOT, and Caltrans, an updated traffic study was requested for the project, which was subsequently submitted by the applicant. And I did just want to note, it was my understanding that when developing the assumptions for this study, it was noted that Caltrans had initially scoped it was called a cable median barrier project that would actually close the median at the North State Street and Yuva Drive intersection. And the study was indeed performed with the assumption that this median would be closed. So I'll go back to this slide and just explain that a little bit further. So essentially, the median here would be closed off, which would prevent motorists from making this left turn into the site or from making a left turn onto Yuva Drive. And in addition, it would achieve the same restrictions that DOT had requested in the previously approved project and for this project, which would be to restrict movements from North State Street onto the highway or from Yuva Drive onto the highway. So as I mentioned, this study was submitted, and it concluded that the project would be expected to generate 5,302 new daily trips. However, the traffic study was referred to Caltrans, who commented in response to the submittal and noted that the cable median barrier project that was initially scoped by Caltrans would not in fact extend through the North State Street / Yuva Drive intersection, and instead would end a few hundred feet south of the intersection where the US 101 changes from freeway to expressway status. And therefore, Caltrans recommended that the median would necessarily need to be closed at this intersection to mitigate transportation impacts of the project. And this would be achieved by the applicant obtaining an encroachment permit with Caltrans as an oversight project through their QMAP process. And based on this response from Caltrans, the applicant submitted a revised transportation study that did not include closure of the median as an assumption within that study. And this revised study concluded that the closure of the median was not necessary and that the intersection would operate acceptably overall under the existing plus project and future plus project conditions. However, this study continued to recommend that, and I neglected to mention this earlier, but this study continued to recommend that acceleration and deceleration lanes be installed on US 101 North and North State Street per Caltrans design standards. So the original transportation study and this revised study both recommended that acceleration and deceleration lanes be installed. And again, I'll go back and just explain that. So essentially, a lane would be installed on the right side of the northbound US 101 corridor. I guess would potentially involve extension of the highway to accommodate that, but lanes would be installed here along the right side of the highway and acceleration lanes here to accommodate folks that are turning right into the site or turning right out of the site to accelerate and decelerate off the freeway or onto the freeway. So this revised study that it did not include this assumption that the median would be closed was sent to Caltrans. who then submitted additional comments outlining several concerns that they had regarding this study. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all the details of Caltrans' comments and concerns, but to summarize, Caltrans noted that without closure of the median, the number of left turn traffic would result in a higher probability of collisions when compared to existing conditions. And at high speeds along the freeway, any collision runs the risk of being a high severity or even a fatal collision. So Caltrans concluded that they could not accept the conclusions of this revised traffic study because it was found to be in conflict with the state's safe systems approach and Vision Zero goals, where they quoted that even one fatality is unacceptable. So therefore, Caltrans continued to recommend that the closure of the median at this intersection was necessary, specifically to mitigate the potentially significant environmental impacts related to transportation as a result of this project. And this is due to the conflict with the state's policies and safety concerns. And staff concurs with these conclusions from Caltrans, and in turn, staff is recommending that conditions of approval be included that require both compliance with the aforementioned DOT standards, installation of the acceleration and deceleration lanes, and closure of the median at this intersection to limit the turning movements through Caltrans' encroachment permit process. I did just want to note, however, that upon further review, so let me back up a little bit. So initially, the recommendations that staff had were to include these as conditions of approval in addition to DOT's recommendations to pursue this ordinance amendment to restrict turning movements. However, upon further review, staff found that this required closure of the median would essentially nullify DOT's recommendations regarding this ordinance amendment, and they would achieve the same restriction in turning movements that DOT had requested. And this is actually outlined in a memorandum that was prepared and submitted for this project. As I mentioned, closure of the median would bring about the same restricted turning movements requested by DOT and would in fact go beyond those recommendations because they would limit turning movements off the highway onto North State Street and Yuva Drive. So at this time, staff finds that DOT's recommendations alone, without the addition of Caltrans' recommendations, would not be sufficient to reduce traffic impacts to a less than significant level, and therefore the inclusion of DOT's recommendations is unnecessary and would only confuse the reader. So therefore, staff is recommending that any motion to approve this project would include the removal of condition number 30 and condition number 31 as shown on the red line version of the resolution that's attached to the memorandum that was prepared. And again, that's because the Caltrans closure of the median barrier requirement would achieve the same restrictions that DOT has requested and in fact go beyond those. So with that, as I mentioned before, there were some other key CEQA considerations. Regarding aesthetics, I did just want to mention that the potential aesthetic impacts related to a 65-foot tall business identification sign were not analyzed within the environmental document, and this is because staff is recommending denial of this variance, and CEQA does not apply to projects that a public agency denies. And additionally, there were some conditions of approval recommended related to aesthetics, and those include the county's external lighting requirements, which require any external lighting to be downcast and shielded or positioned in a manner that does not allow light trespass beyond the property boundary. I mentioned previously the air quality considerations regarding vapor control equipment that must be installed. In addition, the county's general fugitive dust emission standards would apply, and the applicant would be required to contact the Air Quality Management District to determine whether or not any asbestos clearance would be required for this property. And then, again, I mentioned hazardous materials a little bit earlier. A hazardous materials management plan would be required to be submitted to the Division of Environmental Health, and they would need to go through the necessary permitting process to permit the underground storage tanks with the Environmental Health Division. So with that, I apologize for the lengthy presentation, but staff's recommendation is in accordance with the red line resolution that's included in the memorandum, that the Planning Commission make the necessary findings and 1, adopt the mitigated negative declaration, 2, grant a minor use permit for the gas station / convenience store, 3, grant a reduced front yard of 2 feet where 20 feet is required, 4, grant a maximum total sign area of 512 square feet where 128 square feet is required, and 5, deny the maximum sign height variance of 65 feet where 25 feet is required. And that's all I have, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for staff report. And now what we'll do, we'll bring it back to the commission for questions for staff. And I'll start with Commissioner Pollan.
Thank you. So just a quick clarification on one of those last points you said about the CEQA analysis for the aesthetics. You said that because we are denying the sign variance, we don't have to comply with the CEQA requirement. Is that just for the sign height? Because there is I guess maybe not technically a variance, but it is a deviation of the sign size that we are allowing in this situation, and that doesn't trigger any CEQA analysis?
That does trigger CEQA analysis, and that was addressed in the mitigated negative declaration, but only the impacts related to increasing the height were not included.
Okay. And then, so again, in that signage plan, this contemplates that all the signage that exists on the site right now would be removed and would be consolidated onto a single sign?
Not necessarily. The applicant's proposal was to essentially consolidate multiple advertisements, I guess you could say, onto one sign. However, the granted variance would require the applicant to provide I guess let me back up and say that if the proposed sign could be built, it would exceed the maximum sign area. And in fact, although staff doesn't know the exact square footage of the existing signs on the property, it does appear that those, I guess, approach the maximum sign area or maybe even exceed those.
When you say maximum sign area, you mean the 512?
No, 128 square feet. So
128 per business.
So currently in the sign regulations, you have the ability to build 128 square feet of signs as a maximum, regardless of what type of sign they were, if they were a freestanding sign or a wall-mounted sign or a roof-mounted sign. However, there are additional restrictions for each of those sign types. So a freestanding sign could only be a maximum of 64 square feet in size. So the variance that staff is recommending would require that the total sign area on the property, regardless of whether they're freestanding or roof-mounted signs or wall-mounted signs, would be 512 square feet. The individual signs could exceed that 64 square foot limit for a freestanding sign as long as the total does not go above 512 square feet. That makes sense?
Have we received any comment from the other business owners in that shopping center about their assent or not to this type of modification? No. Do you know, this is a quick question for my information. You noted that there are the easements on the property that had been tried to be purchased by the applicant. What are those easements?
All that's described was that there are easements for roadway and utility purposes. That was all that I could find that's described on the deeds, essentially, for those easements.
Okay. That's all for now for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollan. Commissioner Bambini?
Yeah, I had a few questions for staff and maybe one for council, just because I'm not sure. Does the county or the state own the land that's occupied by US 101? I would assume it's the state. And then North State Street and then Uva Drive would be county-owned land there?
That's correct, yes.
So, from my experience in doing encroachment permits where you're granted, an encroachment permit from Caltrans, typically that's for a frontage that's along the highway. I haven't seen, and maybe I'm wrong, where you would, as an applicant, would be working in the middle of the highway, which is state land. Usually it's just along, and when you look at the permitting from Caltrans itself, it's typically the construction along a state highway, not in the middle of the highway, which would require either the applicant to hire and do work in the middle of the highway, utilizing their own personal team, traffic engineer, whoever they utilize, to either close and reroute traffic, do, any type of detour needed. Wouldn't they then have to hire Caltrans to do the work that Caltrans is asking them to do on their behalf for that median in the middle?
I'll say I'm not too familiar with Caltrans' encroachment permit process, particularly as it relates to this project specifically, and how that would play out in terms of who would be, I guess, hired. But the applicant would bear the expense of doing the acceleration, deceleration lane, any of the work that's required by Caltrans in their right-of-way, including closing the median. And I did just want to note, I believe Caltrans intended to be here for this meeting, so perhaps they could speak to that a little bit.
I think they might be.
Yeah.
I guess my other question, this might be to Caltrans. It seems like this project with the cable median in the middle was initially a project that they were working on, and so I don't entirely know why it was stopped where it is. From speaking to some residents I know that utilize that to get across, to utilize and access the businesses, I think it would cause a major detour for them to go all the way around to the other bypass and then come all the way back around. I think that it can be a convenience for people who live, on Uva Drive to get over to the businesses that are on that side of North State. And I guess it's more of just a statement, but I do think it is a convenience for them to not have to, travel all the way around to the next overpass.
Do we have any figures on traffic studies on how many people utilize that cross State Street or?
And then I was trying to do a brief calculation utilizing the GIS that the county has available for how many commercial lots there are in kind of the general Redwood Valley area. I only counted about 20 or so near along North State, and then about 16 off of East Side Road. And so I think we have a really small restricted area where businesses like this can actually occur in the Redwood Valley area. I don't know if you guys have the figure of how many commercial parcels there are in Redwood Valley proper, but I think that, it's a good point to note that, for commercial activity that in this area, it is really limited to very few parcels in Redwood Valley.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's it for me.
All right. Commissioner, before I go, Commissioner Paulin, you had a comment on something.
Thank you. I just said it was a question that Rabini's comment sparked me, and is what are the sort of traffic flow on and off of 101 right now from the Uva Drive and the State Street on ramps, and and I'm curious just in terms of who those serve. My assumption is that they probably mostly serve local residents and people that are accessing those businesses, but do we have any sense on sort of the daily traffic flows as it currently exists?
I don't know if I can answer specifically about who exactly they serve, but and I don't know off the top of my head what the traffic counts are for either those roads or US 101 itself, but I believe that is included in the traffic study that was submitted, and possibly also Caltrans comments in response. So I could take a look and try and find that on the fly here, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
Or maybe Caltrans, when they speak, could speak to that if that information.
All right. Thank you. And before I go back to you, I'm going to give my questions or thoughts to staff. So going back to the canopies that, the large canopies that are, the extra pumps, larger canopy, can you tell me what the size of the original canopy was approved for in 2016?
I believe I can. I thought I had that in my notes somewhere. But, you'll give me one moment. I think I can pull it up.
And while you're looking at that, the other thing I wanted to ask is, I do understand what your explanation of the signage, of adding them together and multiplying 6 times 64 and adding the original. Is there any precedent for that? Or is this a brand new way of calculating signage? Because I've never heard that personally.
I've never run into that in my experience. I don't know if some of my colleagues that have been here for a little bit longer might, but I believe that might be a new kind of method.
Right. Okay.
And then I also did want to say, it looks like the original proposal that was approved in 2016 was for 6 fueling pumps under a approximately 4,000 square foot canopy.
Did it give a size? Yeah, I get the 4,000 square feet, but did it get a shape?
I'd have to look again. Sorry.
Russ Ford, Senior Planner. The previous resolution just states 4,000 square foot fueling canopy and 30,000 underground, 30,000 gallon underground fuel storage tank.
All right. And thank you on that.
Sorry, I did just find it.
Oh, good.
My apologies. It says it was 89 by 35.
It was 89 by 35. Okay.
Here, yeah.
And interesting. So then let's see. Now I want to talk a little bit about the 20-foot setback line and the 2-foot setback line. So if you could get your site plan again, and you do have one of your site plans showing the parcel with a red line around it. There is one that has a red line with that really pops the actual parcel. It's someplace in the package. Because it's a little hard to really see, you know, you can, the dashed property line to where the setback is, the one that's being proposed.
Liam Crowley, staff planner. I'll just have to stop sharing and find the document and reshare. Give me one moment.
Okay. All right. And we need that just for clarification and trying to get an understanding. They need that 2-foot variance or from the 20-foot setback based on, it was based on to allow more capability for cars to enter and leave for the extra pumps, and also they're adding new parking. So I'm just looking at the design, right, of the site, right? By allowing an 18-foot moving closer to their property line, right, towards the street, it gives them quite a bit more square footage so that they could develop extra development. And I can get specific on what they're developing in that, but that's the thinking, right, on this.
Well, I think,
because in the staff report, I think you said they wouldn't be able to get what they wanted without doing that setback based on the 50-foot easement.
right. So the easements that pass through the property, you know, those could not be built upon. You could not build the canopies on them. And staff felt that given the existing zoning regulations that do allow someone to apply for a minor use permit to build a gas station, it's reasonable for them to propose a reasonably sized gas station. And given the existing easements and the existing structures on the property and the 20-foot setback line, there would only be about 6 feet or so of a strip of land between the 20-foot setback line and the beginning of the easements to actually build anything. And when looking at other parts of the property, they were either similarly impacted by the easement or impacted by the existing structure, or there just was not the space or to accommodate canopies of that size.
Okay, and do we have any understanding why the easement, the person who owns the property didn't really want to let go of that easement? I mean, is there anything in writing? I mean, is there like a protection for, there's a reason for that easement. So that's my question. Did you dig deeper to find out why somebody's so attached to that easement?
The only thing I can say off the top of my head is I do know there was a public comment submitted for this project, I believe from a neighboring property owner that mentioned that that easement is essentially necessary for them to travel from their parcel to North State Street. And I would assume that that would be the primary reason why.
All right, okay. Well, I'll hold the rest of my questions and information to later, and I'll go back to the commissioners before I pass it to the public. Do you, Commissioner Pollan, yes, not Pollan, Babini, yes. Do you have anything else to add right now or a question for staff?
I just did a quick math of, from Uva Drive down to the next overpass back and then back to those businesses, and it's almost 3 miles additional transportation. And so I just don't know if that consideration was made for, the use of those businesses that do exist. If, that median was put in, what that vehicle mile traveled was considered at all to have, that route changed for people.
Okay. And Commissioner Pollan, before I pass it to public. Before the public? Okay.
And if I may, Chair Wiedemann, I would suggest that you allow the applicant an opportunity to present before moving to public comment as well, after a break.
Great. Right, you mean now, before we break?
No, after the break.
Okay. Yes, I will request a break, and afterwards we'll take it to the applicant for their presentation or their questions to
10-minute break or?
10 minutes, fine.
So we're returning at
11:15. So we resume 11:15. Thank you.
I realized that my life was going to change dramatically in ways that I did not know or understand or even comprehend. I was going to have to really go to the well and become accountable and adjust to a lot of things differently.
Que queríamos era que naciera, ya quiero tener, entonces ahorita lo que tenemos es aprovecharla, quererla y cuidarla lo más que se pueda.
Creo que a todos nos preocupa la primera vez que nos dicen que vamos a ser padres.
When we started the program, my daughter was about 3 months, and my daughter's 22 months now. Something I love about my child, that she's healthy, she's happy, she knows that she's cared for and loved. Those are some of the things that I wanted to make sure that she had, and she has them.
I'm happy today with my daughter. She's the greatest thing in my life, and I'm glad to wake up and see her, and everything I do it for her.
Sí, bueno, yo también vengo de una familia separada. Creo que por eso también me motiva a estar más presente con él, de quizás también estar de la forma quizás que yo no la tuve para Máximo. Y también comprender que el padre no solo es el que pone los límites y las reglas, sino que también está ahí para hablar, acompañar, regalonear, jugar, cosas lindas también, no solo ser el guía para el niño, sino que también un compañero de vida.
I was more of a elated and thankful because for 3 months I was in baby land, and when you're in baby world, you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and hoping you know that you're just supportive in the ways that you can be supportive.
Pero pues aquí pues ya los enseñan un poquito más cosas que uno no sabía, como cuidarla, cómo desarrollarla, cómo educarla, y pues es algo bien porque pues cosas que yo no sabía, pues ya usted nos las dijo y todo como consejos, y pues muchas cosas que se aprendieron.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia, sino más bien un programa de estado programado para la ayuda solamente. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia con nosotros, porque nos apoya en los momentos difíciles o cuando nos hemos visto en dificultades. Siempre nos hemos podido apoyar en Gaby y a través de su programa. Encuentro que ha sido fundamental el apoyo.
You know, my experience has been nothing but positive. Annette has been wonderful. She's on time. She lets me know if there's going to be any changes in the schedule.
Not only did we get the assistance with this program, but we also made a really good friend. I'm happy to call Gabby our friend.
I still feel the challenge of being a parent now in today's world is immense. I think that you need support.
Es un gran apoyo para nuevos padres, y más aún si están en nuestra situación, que somos extranjeros, que nuestra familia y amigos, como dice Carla, están en otro país, lejos. Entonces sí, viene muy bien el programa para apoyarse tanto emocional y como anímicamente, y bueno, en varios aspectos del programa, que nos ayuda a seguir adelante con esta nueva aventura.
Don't be afraid to take that step. Like, don't be afraid to get help, because you might think that you know what you're doing, but it's always okay to have extra support, and don't do it alone.
Give it a try. You got nothing to lose. It's free. I'm grateful that I took advantage, because it's something that has put me in touch with my child, or closer to my child and her development.
Are you prepared? We're the Office of Emergency Services, and we're committed to providing the most up-to-date and accurate information so that you and your family can stay safe during an emergency. Visit MendoReady.org. It's our one-stop shop for emergency information. You can sign up for emergency alerts, find your pre-established evacuation zone on our current emergencies map, and find hazard and preparedness information.
Imagine you're faced with a disaster such as a wildfire, and you're ordered to evacuate. I'll bet you wish you had more time in that moment. Now's your chance to buy yourself that time. Sign up for Nixle and Mendo Alerts on our website, mendoready.org. Do it today.
If you want your family to be as resilient as possible, it's important to take some time today and visit mendoready.org, where you can look up your pre-established evacuation zones on our current emergencies map. You can also find important tools to help maintain your situational awareness, such as the Alert California wildfire cameras and the Caltrans road conditions cameras. We hope you'll take some time today to prepare so that your family can be Mendo ready. Thank you.
Personally, I think everybody could benefit from the home visiting programs.
I think that as a parent now, I'm grateful for support more than I was before.
I filled out that form not knowing what I was doing. I am very, very grateful that I did it because it's really helping me a lot.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia con nosotros porque nos apoya en los momentos difíciles o cuando nos hemos visto en dificultades.
Well, I was a new mom and I had no experience taking care of a newborn.
There isn't like a book on how to raise a kid.
We come from like a lot of family history of, drugs, violence, alcoholism, so we didn't want our daughter to experience any of that.
The thought that a parent was supposed to be loving, nurturing, supposed to be there for their kid, provide food, shelter, joy, and going in, becoming a parent for her, I had no clue how to provide that.
¿Cómo pensar educarla? Ajá. Cómo educar a un hijo porque pues nosotros nunca, es la primera vez que íbamos a ser padres.
What I think parents should know about home visiting is that you can learn a lot of new things and tips and tricks, how to take care of the baby.
Bring the meeting back to order. And with that, I'm going to ask the applicant for their presentation, and please come up to the mic afterwards. And then after your presentation, I'm going to ask Caltrans if they have a presentation to come up. And then I'll open it up to the public for their comments. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name's Brian Momsen. I'm a local attorney and I represent Faison Corporation and Mr. Alam, who's present. We also have the architect of the project, Richard Ruff. Both of them will be available to answer questions. I also brought the traffic engineer who prepared the traffic study that staff discussed and the updated study, Ms. Daleen Whitlock, and she's going to address the traffic issues on the highway and the interface with North State Street and Anuva Drive. I was also the attorney who represented Faison Corporation back in 2016 when the original project was approved. What's significant about that to me is it was a smaller canopy and 4 less pumps, but the traffic conditions of approval did not involve any work on the freeway. And well, I just want to be clear. If conditions 33 and 34 are imposed on Mr. Alam, we have Ernie Whiff here also. He's going to talk during our presentation, and we're going to try to keep it all to around 10 minutes. But he's going to say that the cost of closing the median and these acceleration, deceleration lanes, both in time and money, are going to be $2 million or more. It kills the whole project. So when you look at what happened here, we had an approved station. There were some problems with one of the neighbors. He had promised a parking easement at the hearing and then reneged on that and wanted $100,000 from Mr. Alam after the hearing. That held up the project. He eventually, I think, purchased that property, but by that time the permit had expired. So that's on us, but we come back hoping just for a similar approval on a very similar project and are faced with a whole new set of conditions that are cost prohibitive. Then you look at what happened with Caltrans, and they can maybe explain this if they're going to make a presentation, but you look at just the papers, and I think Mr. Whiff and Ms. Whitlock might be able to speak to this as well. They were going to do the median closure. We have information that Granite Construction even had this in their scope of work at one point. And then late in the game, after he's already spent a bunch of money on a traffic study, they change their minds and say, oh, well, no, it's going to stop a couple 100 feet short. You're going to have to do this now. And then recommend that the applicant do it. What's going to happen here if those conditions are foisted on Phase Zone is they're not going to do the project. So then you had a situation where Caltrans was going to do this, presumably for public safety, and they saw an opportunity to save costs and recommended a private party do it. The private party can't afford it, so nothing's going to get done. And then this shopping center, which does have some tenants, but isn't exactly thriving, will not have an anchor tenant. And what we have is stagnation, which I respectfully submit shouldn't be the function of state or local government. I wrote a letter I hope you had a chance to consider. I mentioned the federal cases of Nolan and Dolan and what exactly is too much to stick on one project. You know, I would submit having to work on the freeway and close the median and put lanes on a freeway at that type of cost, which maybe even approaches the cost of the whole project, is going too far and not roughly proportional to any impact that this project is causing. I'll let Ms. Whitlock speak to that more. I wanted to briefly comment on the variance on the sign before I turn this over to Ms. Whitlock. I think I owe staff an apology. I said there was no analysis of the special features, topography, and so forth of the property in my letter, and there was. I could see in the presentation this morning, he showed a slide of the hillside from property driving south towards the project. Essentially can't see a sign because of the hillside. There's also, it's depressed in elevation. So we respect the fact that they acknowledge that. But the second part, where having a sign height isn't a substantial right, we disagree with, because certainly a signage for a gas station is important to their business. To most, or I want to say most, but a lot of the customers are driving through this area and don't know the area, and seeing a sign is the only way to attract that business, before they have to get off the freeway, and the traffic southbound is not going to be able to see the sign unless it's high enough to get over the hill. So I'd ask that you consider that in the deliberations on the sign variance, and if there needs to be more study on what that height would, how that might affect neighbors or the environment, then that staff should be directed to go back and further study that. But there is a substantial need, because half the business is coming from the north driving south. With that, I'll turn this over to Daleen Whitlock, who was the traffic engineer, and I'll be around to answer further questions if needed, or now if you want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Daleen Whitlock. I'm a principal with W-Trans in Santa Rosa, and we provided the traffic study for this. I just want to talk a little bit about the...
Could you just bring the mic closer or speak up a little bit?
Okay. Is that better? All right. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the left turn from the highway to North State Street and the need for this median closure. As most everybody knows, gas purchase is one of convenience. It's estimated in our traffic study that fewer than 30 trips an hour would be added, making that left turn. For the most part, it's fewer than that an hour, but that's the highest number that would be added during any single hour. So about one vehicle every 2 minutes. I would note that Mr. Faison indicated in terms of the trip generation that we got based on theoretical rates. He does not think that this gas station would generate anywhere near as many as the 5,000 trips at the driveways that were suggested based on theoretical trip generation rates. So it's probably going to be even less than what we evaluated. So most drivers passing the site are going to be familiar with it. There's not, a small percentage of the traffic that's going to be coming through there would be just traveling through the area, as opposed to people who live in Mendocino County and make the route on a regular basis. So, and patrons tend to go to gas stations that are convenient. So it's going to draw mostly from northbound traffic if people don't like having to make that left turn. And this is similar to the operation of dozens of intersections along 101 throughout Mendocino County, Sonoma County, Humboldt County. Drivers are very familiar with there being left turn lanes off of the freeway and crossing maneuvers in some places. In looking at the delay, one of the things we were concerned about was, you know, our driver is going to be held up so long by through traffic that they're going to find it necessary to take a chance and get out there, even though there's traffic coming. The delay, even under future volumes, is expected to be 11 seconds or less on average. The queue is less than 1 car. So anybody pulling up there and wanting to turn left onto North State Street, they're hardly going to have a wait at all. There's just no reason for them to make an unsafe maneuver. They have plenty of visibility, and there's not a long delay. So there's not a reason for them to want to take that. So there's not a demonstrated safety concern. This particular intersection had a crash rate that is less than the statewide average. So there is no demonstrated safety concern. And I'm not saying that we disagree that the median closure would be better, because absolutely it would be. Anytime you close it, it's going to be safer. The point we're making is that there's no nexus between the gas station and the need to close the median island, because there is not a demonstrated safety effect. What we did recommend in the traffic study is that the left turns and through movements, which was the same, that those be prohibited, which is the same recommendation that came out of the prior conditions of approval. The left turns off of the side streets experienced delays of up 40 seconds plus, up to 60 seconds under projected future volumes. That's when you start seeing people take a risk, because they're waiting for such a long time. 10 seconds is not going to have the same effect. So, what we recommended is that the median be left open unless Caltrans decides to close it, but that the applicant be responsible for taking care of those closures, which again was those prohibitions against movements, which was the same as in the prior project. And from my experience, one of the things I've noted is that when Caltrans finds that there's really a safety problem, they're very good about jumping on it as fast as they can. If this really was a demonstrated safety issue, they would have closed the barrier themselves, either already or as part of this upcoming project. They wouldn't just be depending on a project that may or may not ever get built. Obviously, just because something is approved doesn't mean it's going to get built, as was the case for the prior project. So with that, and again, if you have questions, I can answer them now, or you're available at any time.
Thank you. Being that, is there anybody else speaking from the applicants? Okay.
Well, morning, Commissioners. I was just asked to
verify. Will you state your name?
Oh, Ernie Whiff. I'm Whiff Construction. I was just asked to verify that the expense would be large, over a couple of $1 million probably to achieve the acceleration and acceleration lanes. I was curious. I wasn't, that was all I was asked to do. So in the discussions I've come to, has there been a design on this intersection, any kind of safety improvement design by Caltrans on this intersection ever?
I think you have to, I think you could just say you want that question
okay.
rather than going into.
Okay, good.
Right.
That would be a question I would ask.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Brian Momsen again for the applicant. Just one thing I forgot to mention is if all of these extra traffic conditions of approval have been triggered just by the scope of the project increasing from 2016 to 2021, the 4 additional pumps, the 2 canopies. Mr. Alam wanted the 2 canopies because he was going to have different prices on each canopy. One to compete with the casino down the road, and the other just the normal Chevron prices, not necessarily to attract new customers. But if it means getting rid of conditions 30 and 33, which were not conditions for the 2016 approval, he's willing to do the scope of work called for in the 2016 plans and not the current project. Because, as I said, 33 and 34 killed the project. With that, if you have any questions of me or the engineer, Mr. Ruff, or Mr. Alam, or Ms. Whitlock, we're were available. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now I'll bring it back to the commission for questions for the applicant. Any questions at this time? And I'll start with Commissioner Pollan.
Thank you, Chair Wiedemann. Just a quick question on that last statement. So the proposed project has 2 canopies that have differing gas prices at the different canopies?
Okay. Excuse me. Mr. Alam just explained this to me at the break, so I might need clarification from him. But yes, the answer to your question is yes. He had proposed to have one canopy compete with the casino for cheaper gas and the other canopy to have Chevron gas at higher prices.
And so the proposed modification that you're saying is that they would eliminate the lower priced gas?
I think so, but I didn't ask him. Yes.
Okay, that's all for the moment.
All right. Commissioner Babini.
I do not have any questions for the applicant's team.
All right. I had a question for how far is it from this median closure to the next turn into? We went over that, but how far was that? Like if they close, if Caltrans says, hey, we want to close the medium there, right? No left turn into it. Yes, it's a left. How far is it to make a turn into it in that direction? It would be, I guess, to staff. It would be to the traffic. Yes.
Well, I think actually Commissioner Babini did the same thing we did, which was on Google Earth, is it's about a 3-mile detour to go all the way down to West and then back up to North State.
Uh-huh.
And then after that, you're going south again. But, if you wanted to continue north, that would be, you'd have to go back down and around again. But so
You'd
from
have to
either
go back
direction.
and around, right?
To go
Okay.
southbound, it's
All
about
right.
a 3-mile detour.
Are you saying going back to the gas station, or are you going just to the turn?
So just to get back to West Side, it's about 1.5 miles. If they wanted to utilize those businesses over there, then it would be 3 miles.
It'd be another mile. Or
Yeah,
a
mile and a half.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That answers my question there. All right. Seeing that there's no other questions at this time. I had another one for the applicant. You're saying that you would actually go back to your approval of the 216?
Good morning. Yes.
Yes. State your name, please.
Mahmoud Alam.
Okay, hi. All right, great. So will you explain what you just are saying? If the commission finds that they're keeping the 30, 31, 32 in, you're saying you would prefer to go back to the 2016 approval?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, and so with that, I'm going to go to Caltrans and ask them if they have somebody who could give a report, because a lot of conversation is about Caltrans report. And please state your name and...
Good morning. My name is Rex Jackman. I'm a transportation planning senior with Caltrans District 1 Local Development Review out of Eureka. But our jurisdiction includes Mendocino County. I did have some observations and some thoughts regarding the previously presented information. I've been following both the previous project and the current project on and off. I've been in the same position this whole time, so I've had some involvement with the correspondence that's gone on. There has been a great deal of correspondence over the years related to the two different projects that have been proposed. Just the current project, in looking back through the files, we found 4 different letters that were sent and numerous emails, phone calls, meetings. So I think it's not surprising that some of the information, some of the communication was probably not ideal in terms of clarity. But just to clarify, the communication regarding the cable median barrier project that Caltrans has in development, that project was initiated and scoped in 2019, and it never was proposed to close the median at North State Street. It ended about 600 feet south of that median, south of that opening. The reason for that is that it was a safety instigated project, and those are all, based on collision history. At least traditionally they have been. So the conditions of the existing facility determined where that median barrier would start and end. It was looked at, and considering all the information in the traffic study, our traffic safety branch does have kind of a new paradigm that is more proactive than traditionally, where we were simply always reacting to collisions that have occurred in the past. If we see a situation where we can reasonably foresee that the conditions could become more dangerous or that could result in more severe collisions, we're going to do what we can to prevent that. And in this particular case, we didn't extend our project to close the median because we can't mitigate. The closure of the median was determined to be needed based on the impacts of this proposed service station. The existing condition, as Ms. Whitlock noted, the existing conditions at the intersection doesn't have an above average collision concentration. However, we could see that with all these additional trips, moving across high-speed traffic, we can foresee that that's a greater risk of severe collisions. So we determined that the median would need to be closed if the service station adds all of those additional trips that are going to be making left turn movements across the freeway. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I had a couple other things that I noted. Regarding the statement that, there's not a nexus, the reason that Caltrans doesn't just close the median in anticipation of this service station is because we would be then spending state money to mitigate the impacts of a private development. So that's the reason that we have asked to have the development fund the improvement or the mitigation, because it is mitigation. That's pretty much, those are the question about have we designed a project to close the median? We have not. There's the project, as I stated, the cable median barrier project is scheduled to end south of the North State Street intersection. The other thing I might add, I think, is the idea that we've sort of radically changed our interpretation of things based on the original project versus the new project. The original project was 6 pumping stations, so 12 gas pumps. New project is 10 pumping stations, so 20 gas pumps. But the amount of time that had passed was enough that we thought it would be prudent to do a new study that looked at the whole picture. And the reason that we talked about this cable median barrier project was we were being asked about, what should the scope of the study be? Should it include closing the median? So we were, noting that we do have this project that extends close to there. But again, it could have been communicated more thoroughly, I think, more clearly. But if there's any other questions.
I have a question, one question. If you're going 65 miles an hour, how long does it take to get 1 mile?
A little under a minute, I would guess.
Okay.
My math is correct.
All right, so 1.5 miles, got it. Maybe 1.5 minutes. Just wanting to understand the inconvenience, if there is one. All right, thank you. And Commissioner Pollan, any questions? Commissioner Fabini?
I have no questions or concerns.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now that we've heard the applicant's presentation and we brought in Caltrans since there's been a lot of information, I'm going to open it up to the public comment, and we'll start with people, the public in the room. Sure.
Thank you, Brian Momsen again for the applicant. I wasn't around right when this application was filed to know what the back and forth was between Caltrans, the applicant, and the county, but I think the staff report and their presentation was clear that there was a representation from Caltrans that the traffic study didn't have to look at the Yuba Drive North State Street intersection because Caltrans was going to have this project that closed the median. At least that was everyone's understanding, including staff's. So if that was a miscommunication, it was a hell of a miscommunication. If Mr. Alam had known that he would have to close the median back when this application was first submitted, he may not have even proceeded with the application. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. But just for that, I'm just going to say it's part of the process in the application, right? When you submit an application, staff, it then starts developing, just feedback, getting more information from all the lead agencies. That's pretty standard. So now I'm going to go to public comment, and I'm first going to start with any public in the room. Now I have a list here, and I can call by the list of. Has everybody signed one of these in the audience? If you haven't, will you sign? Sign one so I can just call on it. It'll be easier. All right. So I have Tom. Okay. Could you state your name and when you come to the mic? Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Tom Rawls, and I also presented a written comment. There was lots of discussion by staff about the easement. I am the person that has the easement through the property. Staff acknowledged that there was some talk of purchasing the easement. That was for the first project. That was with my mother. My understanding is that the reason he wants the variance setback for the project is because of the easement. And so and you guys asked what the easement is for my ranching operation and my home. And so to keep my easement, he's asking for the variance setback. Well, that's my driveway. So if you have gas pumps in front, the store in between, where are people going to park? In my easement. The easement is left over from when the cookie factory, I don't know how many of you remember when the cookie factory was there. I say the easement is as a result of the cookie factory and before the 4-lane highway was put in. There was an entrance on the south end of the property, but for safety concerns, they wanted one entrance and went in front of the cookie factory, and all the traffic would flow by the cookie factory. That's where the easement came from. So with my ranching operation, I have a small vineyard, I have a livestock operation that we need trucks to park to do business in our easement. My other main concern is that by the pictures don't exactly show how well and how fast traffic comes from the Willits area south. And, you know, Caltrans pointed out that one life isn't acceptable, and just because it's a $2 million cost for the median, then maybe that's not the site for the project. If it doesn't fit the public good, that's not where the project should be. So those are my two main concerns, is that it's in my easement. There's never been any communication with me on this new project. And so I felt staff maybe kind of mitigated that they tried to talk to the property owner about the easement. There has been no communication about the easement with me. And like I said, my other concern is the safety concerns of coming down that hill. You know, not everybody drives at the speed limit. So there could be a high collision fatality there multiple times in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the next speaker, Christine Boyd. Please come up, state your name.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Christine Boyd, and I'm a resident of Redwood Valley. Since 2016, I've been a member of the Redwood Valley Municipal Advisory Council, the MAC. Beginning at that time, we've sent a series of letters to county officials opposing this project. The most recent one sent to you last month on November 17th. Commissioner Pollan, you will recall from your facilitating of several town hall meetings in Redwood Valley from 2016 to 18, that Redwood Valley residents overwhelmingly support maintaining the rural character of our community. This subject development flies in the face of Redwood Valley residents' wishes. And since the MAC sent our most recent letter to the Commission, we've learned a great deal about the Faison Corporation thanks to research conducted by the Grassroots Institute, Hazy White X reporter Sarah Reith, and Dolly Riley, the current chair of the MAC. These findings are not good. So today, my own opposition to approving this permit is adamant. A court order out of Alameda County issued about a year ago cited dozens of violations of California laws and regulations committed by the Faison Corporation in 7 Northern California counties, including Mendocino. The settlement ordered a penalty of $500,000 assessed against Faison. In fact, leaking underground storage gasoline fuel tanks right here on in the Chevron on Gobi Street resulted in the closure of a City of Ukiah public water well. As a former manager of environmental compliance programs with over 20 years of working with thousands of businesses, both large and small, I will say that though I don't know the people who own and operate the Faison Corporation, I know their type. Faison is a serial committer of environmental crimes in violation of Sections 6.5, 6.7, and 6.95 of the California Health and Safety Code, as well as violations of the Business and Professional Code. In so doing, the corporation put its own employees at risk, endangered the public and emergency responders, cheated their customers by mislabeling gas as high octane when it wasn't, and cheated county governments out of required fees associated with storage tanks, hazmat information, and emergency plans. The leaking of hazmats into groundwater sources represents one of the worst environmental crimes one can imagine, as witnessed the consequences to the public, including children, in Flint, Michigan. Even when Faison was tasked with removing contaminated soils, the court order documents that those soils were mishandled in violation of the law. In over 30 years of government service, I have witnessed few times when such significant financial penalties were levied against a corporation for environmental crimes. Apparently, $500,000 in fines is just considered by Faison to be part of the cost of doing business. It is mystifying to me why the Planning and Building Services Department would not only recommend that you approve the permit for this situation, but also grant significant variances in a permit period of 10 years. To give staff the benefit of the doubt, perhaps they were unaware of the serious violations of the Faison Corporation, but District Attorney Eisner is certainly aware, as are the DAs of 6 other Northern California counties. This type of behavior, evidenced by the Faison Corporation, demonstrates that greed, profit, and trying not to be caught red-handed are their primary motivations and not the public welfare. Please deny this permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dolly Riley, the next speaker. And you have 3 minutes, which I forgot to tell
That's fine.
the previous.
My name is Dolly Riley. I'm the current chair of the Redwood Valley Municipal Advisory Council. I'm asking you do not approve this minor use permit. The Redwood Valley MAC did submit a letter that we all voted and agreed on, and these are my additional comments. Okay, so I personally opposed 10 new gas pumps. The MAC opposed this project 4 times in 2016, 2017, 22, and recently in November, based on the following. Coyote Valley has a large gas station nearby. Electric vehicle charging stations are more appropriate to climate change issues. There are hazmat issues, noise pollution, other issues. I also want to say that in 2018, California legislature passed the 100% Clean Energy Act of 2018, requiring 100% renewable energy by 2045, with the goal of having electricity come from renewable zero carbon resources. This was followed in 2019 when the Board of Supervisors here declared a climate emergency. And 2021, the PUC and California Energy Commission authored joint agency report stating clean energy by 2045 is achievable, construction of clean electric generation and storage facilities must be sustained, and diversity in energy resources lowers overall costs. And by 2035, gas-powered autos will not be sold in California. So another problem is that just this year, Faison Corporation was fined $500,000 for multiple violations. I'm going to say, selling 89 octane as 91 octane, et cetera. Please do not allow this project. Consider a fuel transition. Transitioning to clean energies, California law, it's clearly what the citizens want. I also want to address the letter from Attorney Momsen on behalf of Faison Corporation. He uses the argument that the project was approved in 2016 as a mitigating factor to allow current approval without added expense to Faison in making the freeway improvements. This argument becomes moot in light of the fact that we now know more about the causes of climate change due to increased fossil fuel use and the public not wanting this new gas station, and California law to no longer allow sales of gasoline-powered cars in 12 years. The project needs to be considered in light of the Community Action Plan, the portion of Redwood Valley's addition to the County General Plan, hopefully to be adopted early next year, and worked on for the past 7 years by over 400 people in Redwood Valley, which strongly encourages no new billboards, non-polluting businesses, and local business ownership. This sign that's going to be allowed at 500 plus square feet, picture this, 25 feet from the wall to about here, and higher than the ceiling. That is humongous for little rural Redwood Valley, where we really want to preserve the rural nature and we want local businesses to be accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another speaker, Steve Henderson.
Madam Chair. I had a few things
Steve,
here. Yes.
State your name to the into the mic.
Okay, thank you. My name is Steve Henderson, aka Gizmo. A lot of people know me as Gizmo. So bear with me here for a second. I just wanted to add that really quick, even though it's on my 3 minutes, that there is only one restaurant there, and Mario's is actually changed to a motorcycle club, so just for new information. Also, most of the water source to this building is along that gentleman's easement. His access, the water meters are actually on the other side of that easement. So building over those several water meters is probably partially why the easement is still there. So I'm going to start. I, at the Climate Action Advisory Committee, in accordance with my mandate, would urge that the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors Planning Commission adopt a moratorium on all construction permits of any new fossil fuel stations in the county, allowing this committee to review the permit for recommendations of change or denial. This is also in accordance with efforts in Sonoma, Napa, and Marin counties to ban new fossil fueling stations, as we are going to see them try to purchase and move into more rural areas because cities are banning them, because they know that it's not going to be good for their kids in the future. Furthermore, I would urge the Planning Commission to adopt ordinance for existing fossil fueling stations to provide a tank pump removal plan being submitted to the County Building and Planning Services Department by the year 2025, and or a switchover plan to renewables by the year 2027. This plan would include a submittal fee and a bi-yearly renewal fee to be submitted until such projects are completed. This would allow a choice for fossil fuel station owners and their suppliers, a path for transition or phase out. This would ensure that the county, state, and federal governments or taxpayers are not left with the cost or burden of cleanup, as history has shown us, with the leftover tombstones of industries dotting our county. And I would like to remind folks that there are a lot of concrete right down the center of Ukiah, and one of the reasons why we can't put businesses there, and might I also add, the kids down the street on the right-hand side who are going to high school will not have a place to put their businesses because we still have tanks in the ground that are left behind. So these companies leave this stuff, and we need to make sure that they don't leave this stuff. In conclusion, adopting the suggested code policies countywide would show adjacent counties that we are not only willing to come to the table on climate issues, but have a leadership role to play in ensuring future generations have clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and healthy land to live on. Any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing that we have no other paperwork, is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to address this issue? Please come up and state your name at the mic.
Almost good afternoon. My name's Bob Edwards, and I'm not here on this issue, but I live just down the street on Yuba Drive. But my issue would be if I understood that they were selling diesel to attract 18-wheelers. I drove 8 million miles. In my history, it's very dangerous. I know there's trucks that park there, but if they close the road, if you go down that exit now, there is no flashing light or that is a turn off to North State Street. There's nothing to warn anybody about cross traffic, and I'm not sure about that, but the thing is there's no flashing lights to give a people warning. And if they left the lanes open to the southbound side, they would have to put a entrance on the other side, and that's what concerns me, people making a turn there in an 18-wheeler, because things has changed in the trucking business since I got out of the business, and the drivers think that they have the right to everything, and there's no safety. They don't teach safety, they teach the laws in the books, and I think there's a problem. I was going to become a teacher one time and teach them how to drive truck, and I've driven truck from 1967, and in Mendocino County before they had freeways. So anyway, I just want to make a comment. I'm here for another reason, but anyway, I just want to make a comment because I understand the trucking business and the exit there and the problem when people pull off there, even if they have a ramp, there's a thing about an accident or people falling. I was hit on the side of the road on a Yuba City exit, and I understand people are in a hurry today, and sometimes they don't pay attention. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And anybody else? Okay, come up and state your name in the mic.
Hi, my name is Mari Roden. I'm a member of the Ukiah City Council, and the city has submitted a letter, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the city right now, but just as a resident of the city of Ukiah, and someone who participated in the Ukiah Valley area planning process a little over 10 years ago. And I don't support the project at all, and all the reasons that were mentioned I agree with, but I want to just focus for a second on the 65-foot sign that's proposed. And I don't understand how staff could justify a variance to allow for such a high sign. I think that's like the Petaluma Auto Mall sign, which even within the city limits, an urban area, we would never allow for a sign of that magnitude. But to allow or to recommend one in this beautiful rural area on the outskirts of town is really appalling, and to the extent that it could blight the view shed and blight the travel. And so as far as what I bring it back to the Ukiah Valley area plan is that one of the principal sentiments expressed was to preserve the view shed and the natural environment. And this sign in particular, not to mention the development as a whole, but this sign is completely antithetical to what people expressed they wanted for the Ukiah Valley. And then just to close by saying that really what benefits the city of Ukiah benefits the county, and what benefits the county benefits the city, and we really have to see ourselves as one community. And the people really expressed clearly that this is not the kind of development they want, particularly on the outskirts of town. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chair Wiedemann, if I could just clarify for the last speaker one item. I just want the speaker to be aware that staff is actually recommending denial of the 65-foot tall sign. That was part of the presentation earlier.
Right. And what's the height of the sign that we added square footage to? Was it 35 feet?
Sorry, I'll just clarify. This is Liam Crowley, planning staff. So staff's recommendation is basically to maintain the existing sign height regulations. So no proposed sign could exceed 25 feet, which is the current code standard. Right. But there is a recommendation to allow a larger area for the sign.
Right. Okay, got it. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Any other public expression at this point in the audience? And with that, I'm going to take it to is, do we have any telecomments?
We have 5 people on Zoom wishing to speak, so I'm going to start with Peter McNemee.
All right. Can you bring Peter in?
He is on. I just don't know if we just can't hear him.
We can't hear you, Peter.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, there
can you hear
are.
me now?
Now we can. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak to this question before you today. I'm reminded that one of the reasons that we have land use regulations administered by the county and a planning commission is that we benefit from the human element of evaluation and judgment, and that your mission is to promote the public welfare. And in hearing the applicant make their presentation, they made their case, and they had every right to do that, based on their own self-interest. In other words, they're arguing that that they need to have these variances and that they need to have these permits in order for them to be profitable and to have a business. But they have no right to have a business per se at the public's expense. It is your duty and job, and I appreciate the fact that it is a tough job. But to hear these applicants in the context of what is the best public interest, and that is what the law and the code says is your obligation. And I believe, based on what you have had presented to you in the way of documentation, the law, and the testimony that's provided to you here today, a compelling case has been made that permitting this project is not in the best public interest. That this is an area of the county that is rural in nature, and that a project of this size and magnitude would bring additional traffic into that area and undermine the quality of life of the people that live there. You've heard from the people who live in this community, and they voiced their opposition repeatedly to this project being put into place. And I find that very compelling, and I hope that we listen to that. I'm also very concerned about the people traveling on Highway 101 and their health and safety. And the addition of this added gas station on Highway 101 poses, I believe, a serious threat to the health and safety of the commuters on those roads. You know, you're adding into this equation trucks making left-hand turns off of southbound 101 into this new gas station, and cars are speeding along at a stated speed limit of 65 miles an hour. But anyone who's driven that stretch recognizes that people often exceed that. Let's just face realities. People are often going 70, 75, 80 miles an hour, coming down the hill and going up that hill. And the fact that there would be large trucks carrying hazardous materials attempting to cross the northbound lanes to get into this gas station poses a serious threat, not only to the motorists, but to the community as well. So I believe you have no obligation,
Excuse
a
me,
prior board.
Excuse me, Speaker, your 3 minutes are up. I appreciate your comments, and thank you. Do you have a closing one sentence? I guess I lost him. Is the next telecom commenter available?
Next, I have Don Hess.
Don Hess, please state your name and do your presentation. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Chair Wiederman, Commissioners, and PBS Director Krog and staff, good morning. This is Don Hess from Gualala, member of the Grassroots Institute. Quite frankly, I'm a bit surprised that Mr. Mahmoud Alam and Faison Corporation have persisted in pursuing this minor use permit application, especially if they knew that by submitting their fossil fuel infrastructure project to the Planning Commission, they risked exposing themselves to additional reputational damage as the public spotlight illuminates the sorry history of their 64 health and safety code and gas pricing violations, leading to a $500,000 fine and a court order to remedy the violations. This operational record, documented by 7 district attorneys, revealing a flagrant disregard for rules and regulations designed to protect the public health, the environment, and consumers, is more than enough to DQ the applicant and deny the use permit. But there is more. A new gas station in Redwood Valley is neither needed nor wanted, period, full stop. And in a world in which global temperatures keep rising, setting new off-the-chart records, and in a world in which sea ice extent at both poles is inexorably shrinking, And in a world experiencing more devastating storms, floods, wildfires, and heat waves, we cannot continue a business as usual approach by ignoring these realities and proceeding anyway to approve more fossil fuel infrastructure projects, these fuels being the primary contributors to global heating. The fact is, we already have enough gas stations in Mendocino County, as our careful analysis showed in the report we submitted. Which brings me to this. I would like to thank Commissioner Marie Jones, even though she is not here today, for her work in 2020 on the Mendocino County Climate Action Advisory Committee. While she was chair, they drafted a landmark climate emergency declaration that was subsequently passed unanimously by the County Board of Supervisors. This document was meant to be a guiding light for county government at all levels. And I quote, "The County of Mendocino joins a worldwide call for a just transition away from fossil fuels and an urgent collaborative climate mobilization effort focused on enacting policies that dramatically reduce heat trapping emissions," unquote. Finally, one last comment. I think the public has a right to know whether or not the county has been compensated for every single hour of work spent over the years on the application. The county is in a fiscal crisis, and we can't afford to provide free or discounted services to wealthy businessmen living outside the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I have the next speaker, please?
Next, we have Carrie Durkee, and I apologize if I butchered your name.
Ms. Durkee, can we have you state your name and give 3 minutes worth of input?
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, good morning. Just barely afternoon, I think. My name is Carrie Durkee. And I'm one of the co-founders of the Grassroots Institute. Our slogan is Progressive Solutions for the Common Good. It's composed of people all over the county working towards the public safety and good. So I'm giving a people's point of view. We need to change this business as usual. We need to reverse the tide. We need to go towards a sustainable future for survival. There are so many reasons not to approve this permit. Any way you look at it, I really applaud the people who came before me. You know, the local people, the truck driver, Peter and Don. Thank you so much for your good research. We need a change at a systemic level. Again, our slogan is Progressive Solutions for the Common Good. So what are the commons? What is the common good? Air quality, water. Also, hazardous materials, we get those too. You know, what do we have to do with them? What do we have in common? People, ecosystems, and climate, public safety. This seems like an easy time to say no. No more fuel gas stations. There are 2 already operating in this area. Let them have their standing. This corporation has had, again, 64 violations related to 12 different stations, 5 in Mendocino County. And to repeat, the application is currently under court order to pay $500,000 fine. This is somebody you want to allow to do business in our neighborhoods. Please work for the common good, the public interest. Celebrate the commons. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker?
I now have Marcy Snyder.
What was the name, please?
Marcy Snyder.
Marcy Snyder, you can start speaking. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. I'm a resident of Mendocino County. My name is Marcy Snyder, and I'm very concerned about this corporation coming in with yet more gasoline stations, especially in the light that it's been mandated that no new petroleum-powered passenger vehicles be sold in the state of California by 2035. We are only going to be allowed for passenger vehicles to have zero emission vehicles. What do we need another gas station for? We need electric vehicle charging stations. This company has court judgments against them. Freezon has court judgments for health and safety violations. Do we want this in our neighborhoods? Do we want ground contamination, water contamination? An imposing giant gas station in a rural neighborhood that doesn't want it? I urge that you deny this permit application. There's all good reasons to do it. The people don't want it. It's not for the common good, that's for sure. It doesn't promote public welfare. It does the opposite. And there's multiple reasons that have been mentioned already, as well as the health and safety reasons and the quality of life reasons. Once again, I want to urge you to deny this project application. It flies in the face of our rural community and our well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Woody Hastings.
Woody Hastings, will you state your name, and you have 3 minutes to share with us?
Sure. Thank you very much. My name is Woody Hastings. I'm the co-coordinator of the coalition opposing new gas stations. It's a not-for-profit, community-based organization founded in 2019, which, as the name makes evident, we're opposed to new gas stations. So here today to chime in to also oppose or to urge you to deny the permit. Since its founding in 2019, the coalition has, we call it Congress for short. The coalition has defeated 3 gas station proposals and helped the county and 6 cities in the county to permanently prohibit new gas stations. This is for the local environmental reasons and other reasons, and then also the climate crisis imperative. We did send a letter, and we're extremely concerned that there's even consideration of this particular applicant to be granted a permit to operate a new gas station, given that track record. I won't go into detail on that. I hope you did receive and read that letter. The main thing I just want to say today is that what happens at the local level really matters. Decisions that you make matter. You know, there's this international conference that's underway in Dubai right now on the climate crisis. And the reality of the decisions they might make at those international and at the national level and at the state level really devolve down to things that have to happen at the local level. So let's just not wait for that. Let's make the decisions here and now because we recognize them for the problems that they are, and again, deny the permit. Yes, thank you for, congratulations for adopting a climate emergency declaration in 2020. Since that declaration was declared, things have not gotten better. 2022 was the hottest year globally ever on record, and 2023 is on track to beat 2022. So it is a crisis, and I urge the Planning Commission to plan toward 2050, not 1950, and deny this permit. Mendocino County does not need any more gas stations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next speaker?
That was the last speaker with their hand raised on Zoom.
All right. Seeing that was our last speaker, I will now close the public comment, and I will ask staff if they have any final remarks. After staff.
I have no further remarks, thank you.
Russ Ford, Senior Planner, just to follow up on Commissioner Pollin's previous questions, the final traffic study did have a 5-year analysis of that intersection at the highway and Yuba Drive. From January 1st, 2017 through December 31st of 2021, the average daily traffic was 14,900. So with the estimated increase in the current traffic study of 5,000 and change, that would put it over 20,000 trips a day through there.
All right, thank you. Since the staff has no other final remarks at this point, I'm going to ask the applicant for their final remarks.
How it is, take out those 4 words and prioritize.
Thank you. Brian Momsen again for the applicant. Just briefly responding to the public comments. This hearing shouldn't be a referendum on the pros and cons of gas stations or global issues. There's a C1 zoning that this gas station fits into, as the staff report mentions. There's already been environmental study regarding that zoning in this location, which I would point out is in a shopping center immediately adjacent to US 101. So that issue's been vetted already by environmental study. A gas station is appropriate for this zone in this location, and I would point out a similar project was already approved in 2016. A few things. There is no canopy for trucks for this gas station. It will not be serving bigwig trucks. Mr. Alam does live in the county. I would point out that he has run gas stations in this county for over 20 years, including Jensen's Truck Stop, the Arco on Talmadge, forgetting the brand, but the gas station on Gobi Street. And his corporation has not caused any issues in this county. He could address the points about fines and so forth, but he informs me that none of the fines were for pollution or any sort of environmental contamination. They were what he called paper fines, or some failure of his managers to adequately submit paperwork to the state. He is one of the few members of this community that's actually doing development in this county. If you look at the project on North State Street in Jensen's, it's a nice project. He is benefiting this community. And that's one of the reasons, that when Caltrans is trying to impose these conditions on him, which I think is pretty transparent, that you might want to consider that this guy is doing a lot for the community and maybe standing up to Caltrans. Ms. Whitlock disagreed with something that was just said about the traffic study. I address that? Thank you.
I just wanted to point out that when we were talking about volumes just a second ago, you indicated that the number of trips currently on 101 and said the project would add 5,000. That's not true. Most of the trips to a gas station, when we talk about the 5,000 trips that the trip generation indicates, those are at the driveway. Most of those are cars that are already on 101, and so it would really only add about maybe 1,500 trips a day, not 5,000.
Okay. Thank you. And now we'll take it to, I'll ask the commission, Commissioner Pollin, if you have any questions for the applicant or staff.
Not at this time.
Commissioner Babini?
If, this would be for staff, if we did have requests for changes to the conditions of approval, would that need to move this item to a future date then for approval or denial?
Russ Ford, Senior Planner, yes, we would appreciate a continuance, probably to a date uncertain, to update the reports and the analysis.
Okay, thank you.
And as Commissioner Wiedemann here, I had a question for staff that since we had the owner of the easement here, the question I have is, how did that not happen, that information not come across your desk? If that land's been owned by this gentleman and his family for many years. 1944. That's a question for me from staff.
I guess I'm a little bit confused about the question, but
Okay.
I guess
I guess the question is, we have a major easement that the staff report is working around, right? You're asking for a variance from 20 feet to 2 feet to avoid this easement. And to me, easements are important of who owns those easements, who's part of those easements, because there's reasons for those easements, many reasons, right? In this case, it connects to his business, it connects to, and so we now allow a change of design based on a 2-foot setback outside the variance to avoid this easement. It seems that it would have been prudent to find that research. That's all I'm saying.
I can say that I did go back and review the previous project that mentioned that information about the easement. I guess the only information in the previous report was just I guess, how the deed was written on, or how the easements were written on the deeds. And as far as the current ownership or the purpose of the easement, that's not specifically mentioned on those documents that are reviewed. I didn't conduct any additional research beyond that. If that was an oversight on my part, then I'll take full responsibility for that. But I do, I agree, perhaps that was an oversight to not do a little bit more digging.
Thank you. I have no further questions for staff at this point. And with that, I close the public hearing. The matter is now before the commission. Public comment is no longer permitted. And we can have a discussion before making a motion. Commissioner Holland. Terrible.
It's all right. I feel inclined to deny this permit. I think that some of the findings that staff makes on hearing the evidence from the public in evaluating this, would have a hard time approving those, particularly use permit finding number 3, which states that this will not constitute a nuisance or be detrimental to the health, safety, peace, morals, or comfort or general welfare of the persons residing or working or passing through the neighborhood. It seems to me that the information provided by Caltrans does clearly indicate that the addition of this gas station would provide a significant alteration to the traffic flow in the area. And it seems that the only way to approve it would be to close that median and to have the acceleration and deceleration lanes added. And that would impose a significant burden upon the existing businesses and residents that utilize that current traffic situation. So that's the part that I have the hardest time with. I don't my own personal opinions about gas stations notwithstanding, I also don't think this should be a referendum on a global scale, but I do think the particular issues at hand for this local issue lead me to believe that we should deny this permit.
All right. Commissioner Babini?
So I guess when it comes to conditions, well, 30 through 34, or 32, sorry, depending on if the other two were in there or not. I guess I'm kind of torn. I think that when I look at the discussion on traffic, if the median was closed, all of the traffic that would enter and exit off of either UVA or North State would then be directed towards a residential neighborhood on either side. UVA Drive has a pretty heavy residential area, and so if we're talking about 5,000 trips, that means those cars are now driving near residences versus staying, just crossing the highway. And so I think that, even with approval, I would want to remove those conditions because I don't actually think that putting that median in there would be beneficial to the residential community that's there. I actually think that having that break in the highway allows for folks on both sides of the road to access the businesses that are currently existing there or any new development that would go into that space. Currently, if you go by the businesses in that proposed building, quite a few are closed and have vacancies. There's, I think, only, from what I remember driving by the other day, there was 2 or 3 in the 6 businesses that are available to be utilized there that are even open. And so for me, I think I would actually vote to approve, but with the removal of those conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner Babini. And I'll state a little bit. I find this project has a lot of, as presented to the commission, has a lot of flaws in it, and I cannot support supporting this application for approval. And clearly, obviously, you can understand that I have an easement issue here with the design of the project, trying to allow a setback of 2 feet. I think that's problematic to allow more expansion. And I appreciate the applicant saying, hey, we'll go back to the 2016, right? But what's before us is a different project. I also want to say that the City of Ukiah's Community Development Department I think they wrote and listed several planning principles that I would like us to keep adhering to, because it's not just an isolated development. It is tied to an area. And I'm going to go back to the, Development Policies 83, DE 83, DE 85, view sheds, DE 94, how we promote infill, right? Is this really doing that? So from my sense of land use planning, I can't support this application, and we could write up more findings if we need to. And with Caltrans, what's interesting to me, somebody who I deal with Caltrans, and I find Caltrans sometimes to be cumbersome. Sometimes I find them to be, for my applicants, I can find them sometimes to be, not necessarily overreaching, but expensive for the property owner to deal with. However, it is about long-term safety. And in other words, these roads are going to be here forever. And so what is amazing to me is that it's going to take somebody, if we put a median in here and there's like a pushback because it's a minute and a half more to get into that gas station, going 65 miles an hour if you're doing it. It's kind of it's just, I think that's not, from my point of view, that is just not enough value to protect possibly somebody making a turn in and somebody leaving that place and possibly causing an accident. I just think that's problematic. And I think that's a simple fix. And I don't think that would disturb the project that much if they had to if the median was put in. I really don't. So if that becomes a money thing, that's for the client. But I think I'll pass with that. Can I entertain a motion?
Well, I won't move as it's approved right now, so I think if I'm going to make a motion to have some from staff to provide findings for why we are approving denial.
Okay. So, Julia, can you?
Thank you, Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director. So I think what we would appreciate is possibly a tentative motion from the commission, and staff would need direction on what revised findings would include as well.
Okay.
And we would suggest that that actually come back at a future agenda to allow staff adequate time rather than just through a break or something. I think it warrants additional work by staff. So if the commission does move that direction, then we can talk about a date certain to continue that item to present any revisions.
So would you like the motion to be to, how would you like us to frame this motion for that?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, I think it'd be a tentative motion if it is for denial, with directions to staff to come back and prepare findings based on further discussion by the Planning Commission as to what the basis for those findings would be, and then selecting a date certain for that as well.
And we do that.
I'd like to make a motion that a tentative motion for denial with direction to staff to come back with findings to concur with that finding for denial and to set it for a date certain. Do we have a date that we would want to propose at this point?
If I may, I would suggest, since we're going into the holidays here, to look at a date in February. The choices are February 1st or February 15th, and I think staff could work with either one of those. So. Oh, the 15th is not available, sorry, so we would suggest then February 1st, or we'd be looking at March.
So my motion would say for a date certain of February 1st, 2024.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Babini?
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan?
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann?
Yes, but I have a problem with the date. I will be out of town, and I will be back we're not having a meeting on the 15th?
This room is not available on the 15th, so if we were to hold a meeting, we would have to look at alternate dates with clerk of the board staff, and it would be a special meeting, and that would be something that we couldn't do at this exact moment. That would be renoticing the project then at that point.
And what would be it would be the next meeting would be the March?
Yes, and I'm just pulling up my calendar. That looks like it would be either March 7th or March 21st.
Well, could we move it to the March 7th?
At the will of the commission.
As the maker of the motion, I would amend it to say date certain of March 7th, you said? March 7th, 2024.
And
that works for me.
And then I can vote yes on that.
Deputy County Counsel, you want to make sure we're doing this right?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, I think if we need to restate the motion, we can. Great. But also I see that the attorney for the applicants at the podium, if you want to hear any comments or concerns they have, talks about timing or something different, this might be a good opportunity.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
So the date was March 7th? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kardowski, I'm just wondering if findings are even necessary for a denial. If they're going to deny the application, we'd just prefer they do that so we could appeal to the Board of Supervisors and not wait 3 months just to get denied. Thank you.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I would of course recommend findings for denial, so it's clear what we are disapproving the project of and what the basis for the appeal would be. I think denying it without findings or discussion or description would be, I would advise against that. We could, do you want to talk about the second meeting in January?
If the commission would prefer, I mean, it's a shorter timeline, but there is a second meeting in January if the concern is about delay for the applicant as well to be able to exercise any options that may be available to them. Let me just look at what those dates are as well. It looks like that date would be January 18th.
Not going to be, I'm unfortunately out of town for 2 weeks at that time. I mean,
And so then your only other dates are January 4th.
I could do January 4th. To expedite this. But I do think we need our findings.
It's really, it's at the will of the commission. So
Yes.
I'm going to defer, the commission, the maker of the motion, and the second can decide which date is what you would like staff to work towards. I would implore that you please do not put it onto the 21st. There's not enough turnaround time for us to make that happen, so.
Is there enough time for the 4th of January?
I guess, Liam Crowley, planning staff, I can speak to that as far as my own workload, I suppose. I feel comfortable with that date to come back with findings.
All right, well, as the maker of the motion, I would amend it once again to continue to a date certain of January 4th, 2024.
And the
Do we-
second?
We have clarity. Do you want me to restate the entire motion?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I would appreciate just a clean restatement of the motion
Okay.
with that date. And also, I think one of the things it would be nice to have additional direction by the commission about what the reasons for a denial that we can be utilizing. Obviously, staff can look towards the comments as well, but looking for direction from the commission about the basis for a denial motion.
Great. So I would move that we, a tentative motion for denial of this application based upon the use permit findings contained in what is now listed as item number 3 of the use permit findings, finding that this does have an undue burden on public health, safety, comfort, and general welfare of the persons residing or working or passing through the neighborhood of the proposed use. And I would propose that we bring this back for a full vote on the January 4th, 2024 meeting.
I would second that.
Did we do it right? Or do we need more?
Vote to deny.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, a tentative motion to deny, directing staff to bring back findings for denial based on use permit finding number 3 in general. Are there factors then that we discussed within, that would support that?
Yeah, for me, the factors that I would cite are the impacts to traffic and circulation in the neighborhood and the impacts of what would it mean, what it would mean to that neighborhood should we approve this project, and the traffic mitigations that would be necessary to accommodate this project.
Can we add something else to that? I would also add setbacks.
Pardon me, if you could clarify what you mean by the setbacks.
I think the 2-foot setback from the request for a variance for a 2-foot setback, and the that it puts, I think, an extra burden on that easement.
Now can I second? I second that.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Babini,
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, tentatively.
Okay. Commissioner Pollan, or not, Babini has a question for staff.
I just had a question for staff because I know it came up from the applicant in their potential request to modify the use permit back to what the original use permit was for in 2016. If that was something that the applicant wanted to do prior to our January 4th meeting, would they be able to request a modification to that use permit application?
If I may, Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director, the applicant would have to file essentially a revised application with us, but at this point, we do have this tentative motion from the commission. But, in filing a revised application, there would be not enough time for staff to conduct any level of analysis, referral to agencies. It essentially sends you back to going through that initial application check, referral to agencies, et cetera.
Thank you. I just wanted to see what that process would be like so that if, folks in the room were interested that, they would have what that process would look like potentially if that was their choice.
And I would say, ideally, we would want to see that there would be direction from this commission as well to explore that as opposed to the current direction, which is the motion for denial of the project.
All right. Thank you very much. And what we're going to do is just, we have one more item on our regular calendar, and instead of taking a break, I'm going to go to it. And so thank you everybody for participating. And so item number 6C, it's case UR 2023-0005, Richard and Jody Murphy Camp Associates, renewal of a use permit U21-2004 to allow continued use of an existing wireless communication facilities. I'm going to open the public hearing. Have there been any correspondence, telephone, or correspondence?
Correspondence have been posted to the website.
Okay, great. Can we have staff presentation? Thank you.
Thank you again. This is Liam Crowley, staff planner for this project. So the applicant is John Scandola on behalf of Camp and Associates. The owner is Richard and Judy Murphy, and the tower owner is US Cellular. So continue on here. So some background on the project. So the applicant wishes to renew use permit U21-2004 for continued use of a wireless telecommunication facility, and this renewal would not authorize any changes to the facility itself. I did just want to note that use permit U21-2004 expired in March 21st of 2023. County Code Section 20.196.050B allows administrative renewal of use permits without a public hearing, provided the application has been timely received, no additional conditions are recommended by referral agencies, and no objection to granting the renewal has been received within 10 working days after the notice has been given. So, in accordance with this section of the code, the application was prepared for this administrative renewal process. However, when the notice was sent out, there was an objection letter received from a neighboring property owner, and as such, that necessitated and triggered a need for a public hearing. So that's why this project is before you here today. So moving on. Just a little bit more background. These are just a couple maps showing the project location, general location in, the Redwood Valley area or Calpella area, and an aerial photo. And this yellow star on the right is the location of the wireless telecommunication facility on that site. So some additional information about the existing facility. It's located on an approximately 30-acre property, which is under the Agricultural General Plan Classification and Zoning District. The facility contains an approximately 80-foot tall monopine tower, which includes an equipment shelter and diesel generators on the ground. The facility also includes transformers, cabinets, and a propane tank, and it's a 3,600 square foot leased area surrounded by a chain link fence. And again, this is just a more zoomed in photo of the facility itself. So here's a general site plan of the facility. You can see the access is derived from Finn Road, which is a private road on the eastern or the western side of this property, and the road traverses the property to the east and eventually winds to the leased area where the telecommunication facility is located. These are just more site plans showing a little bit more detail about the access from Finn Road and also the facility itself in the leased area showing the tower. In terms of some key issues regarding this project, referrals were sent out on July 18th, 2023. No critical comments were received from these agencies. And again, as I mentioned, this renewal would not authorize any changes to the facility. The renewal was found to be consistent with the general plan, zoning, and wireless facility guidelines, primarily because no changes would occur. As I noted before, an objection letter from an adjacent property owner was submitted, and that's included on page 45 of your packets. I don't want to misstate anything, but I guess I can just try and summarize what was said in the objection letter. But essentially, the owner asserts that the applicant did not obtain permission for use of the power and communication lines running through their property to the, I guess, property in which the facility is located on. The applicant then submitted a response to this objection letter, and that's included on page 46 to 49 of your packets. And again, to summarize, the applicant's response to this objection asserts that Verizon has no obligation to obtain such permission due to Pacific Gas and Electric's longstanding easements for these said power lines. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So just an additional note from staff. Staff cannot necessarily adjudicate these easement rights that are in question. A specific determination as to the rights of the facility owner regarding power lines and easements that extend across this adjacent property are outside of the scopes of staff's review, and I think that's noted in the staff report. I will say, though, that Mendocino County Code Chapter 20.196, which is the section regulating use permits, is silent regarding any requirement whereby the applicant must notify or obtain permission from an adjacent property owner when the use of such an easement passing through an adjacent property benefits the project. And also noting that the master license supplement and the ground lease that were submitted contain additional information regarding the facility owner's ability to essentially make use of the easements. But beyond that, I don't think I can comment any further on the specific rights regarding the easements and the scope of those easements. So with that, I did also just want to note that the tower owner of Verizon did also submit a letter under public comment that was a response to this objection as well, and that's posted on the website. And I believe they're also available on Zoom, perhaps, for any questions or comments as well. So with that, staff is recommending by resolution to approve the use permit renewal based on the facts and findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the resolution, which is Exhibit A. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. So I'll invite the commission. Did you have any questions for staff on this? Commissioner Babini?
I guess my only question was in the key issues, are we talking about like a deeded easement from like PG&E for power lines and communications across the neighboring parcel? I guess I was just a little bit confused by the letter received and the key issues.
Yes, that's correct, as far as I understand it from looking back at the deeds and also what was submitted.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pollan? Seeing none, I have no questions at this time, and therefore, is the applicant present? And if so, they can speak, or...
I'm Bob Edwards. I'm the one that filed the complaint.
Okay, so do we, hold on, Bob?
Yeah, okay.
No, we'll get right to you. Is the applicant on telecomment or anything?
I have a Johns and a Paul Alberton, so I will allow both of them in.
Hello, my name is John Scandola. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you just state your name?
Yes, my name is John Scandola, and I am the applicant, and I'm speaking on behalf of Verizon Wireless regarding the renewal of this use permit on this property. And basically, I'll be brief, but Verizon has operated this facility as indicated for a number of years without incident, and we are merely submitting a request to renew this permit. This facility has provided critical communications and emergency services capabilities to this area since this time. And the facility currently uses power from an existing generator that is powered by the PG&E lines that were mentioned, which have provided service to this parcel and a number of properties along Finn Road. These lines are operated per PG&E easements that have existed along this road since the 1950s. And Verizon uses and pays for this power, as does any other customer in this area. Basically, our intent is just merely to renew this permit in order to continue to provide this service. And we are requesting that the commission follows the recommendations of planning staff to renew this conditional use permit so Verizon can continue to operate this facility and this infrastructure.
Thank you. Is there another speaker, or was that it?
Paul Albritton, I'm outside counsel for Verizon Wireless, and thank you so much for listening to our application. We promised to be shorter than the previous application. Verizon, we sent you a letter which explains Verizon Wireless's legal position, which is simply that Verizon is a customer of PG&E and AT&T and has been receiving power from those entities who themselves, state-regulated entities, have obtained easements for their power pole line. So there really is no issue here with respect to having to obtain additional consent for the easement, just because we're another customer down the line of a pole line. We concur with the staff's position that this is really not something within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Even if there were a legitimate dispute regarding the easement, that would be a civil matter for the courts and not for the Planning Commission. We're here to answer questions and appreciate your attention to this application.
Thank you. I believe that's the applicant's presentation, and so I'm going to bring it back to the commission and ask if Commissioner Babini has any questions for the applicant.
I do not, thank you.
Commissioner Pollan?
I do not.
And Chair Wiedemann does not have any questions for the applicant. And with that, I'm going to open public comment. And please come from the audience, please come to the mic and state your name and make your comment.
Thank you. My name is Bob Edwards. I'm the adjoining neighbor to Murphy. And so I'm at 660 Finney Road. And a little back history, they said a little bit of it. In 1953, the phone line was put in underneath the power line. But there's never been a established contract with PG&E and Verizon or AT&T at that time that they ever have a contract. I followed up on this when they applied for the tower, and the tower, I objected to the tower because we didn't want it, the traffic and stuff. and they went ahead and made us let them go through this. This power line that they put in was for 3 houses on Finney Road, which was smaller than my little finger, so we couldn't see it. It wasn't an issue. But when the AT&T or Verizon come in, I think it was another company, come in and put it across I went to a lawyer and couldn't go to court on it because my finances. I'm just a truck driver, so I'm not financially able to fight the situation. So I object to the line because it starts on the corner, the northeast corner of my property, goes all the way across my front yard and exits on the southwest of my property. So it goes completely sideways on my property. And I have 40 acres, and it goes completely on in there. Now, this company, I offered to have them put it underneath the ground. At that time, it wasn't a law for them to do that, but now it is, to put it underground. I even offered to dig the ditch to the line. Now, on Murphy's property, they put everything underground. And on my property, we have PG&E and this phone service, or to the tower. And that line is big as a baseball, and it goes right across my property. Probably I'm getting a little confused on what I'm telling you. I'm trying to get it done in my 3 minutes, but I'm not going to make that. So they pay $4,000 a year for use the road, because Murphy don't own any property to the road. All I'm asking them to do is contact me, and either they can put it underground. We're going to have PG&E put their line underground because we're in a fire hazard area, and PG&E puts it under there. They need to put theirs underground too, but they don't want to do the expense. They want me to deal with the line, and I've lived here over 50 years, and so we have to deal with this every day. So we'd like them to contact us and either do something or tell us what they will do. Either they'll pay me for the service that I provide for the line going across my property, or put it underground at a different location. We don't even want the stuff on our property.
Thank you. Do you have a site plan of this? Put it on the screen. And Lime, with your cursor, can we try to show the issue?
I don't know if this is going to be sufficient, because it seems like
Where's his property here?
Yeah, let me.
Maybe the
this
other
might
one.
not be the best site plan. Let me find a better one. Bear with me. Give me one moment.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's fine. And while we're waiting for this, County Council, is there anything that this application is for renewal, right? What's our jurisdiction here?
Deputy County Council Matthew Godrowski. I mean, this is for renewal of the tower, but this is a pre-existing situation under an existing easement across the property. Sorry, that one inch is what makes the difference, apparently. It's an existing easement, existing poles, and an existing line across a property. I think that if there's an issue in terms of the scope of the easement, that would be a civil matter between the holder of the easement and the subject property.
And if I may, Liam Crowley, planning staff, I did just pull up, this was, excuse me. This was part of the packet and was submitted by the applicant along with their response to the objection letter. So just reading through this, I think you'll see They mentioned the second image below shows the Finney Road to the facility. The yellow parcel represents the Edwards property, and the blue parcel represents the Murphy property. The red X on the Murphy property is the existing power pole from which the facility is drawing power. So here we have in yellow the Edwards property, and in blue the Murphy property. The red dot is the facility, and the green line is the easement in question here. And I believe they run through that, where that green line was, the easement, so, yeah, sorry. There we go.
Thank you, Liam.
Yes, sir.
I believe your name was Bob, right?
Yes, Bob's right.
Okay. And your property is?
It's in the yellow.
It's in the yellow. So it goes right in front of your property, or
It
right
goes,
along the side?
if you look at his property line, the little property between his property and mine, the back side of that's the line, our property line. That is Campbell's, that is next, it goes across through him, and his, the power comes out right at his entrance to his property, and it's underground. It's underground. It's not overhead. It's underground. But everybody else has to deal with it overhead. They don't have a contract with PG&E. I went through this when they first put the tower in, and PG&E says they don't have it. It's a courtesy, not a right to use the pole. And so they're across my property. It's a business going across my property that PG&E doesn't approve. They just a courtesy.
Right. So the problem here, I think, for this commission here is that our county council says that there's not really anything we can do at this junction. It's a civil matter, which
I understand.
know.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry about that, that because it's difficult, I know, to work with these agencies at some points.
Well, we'd like them to contact me and pay for the use of my property, because if you talk to PG&E, they'll tell you they don't own the property, they own the pole. And they're using the pole and not paying PG&E anything. There's no contract with them. And they need to get a hold of me and make a deal with me to cross my property.
And that is Verizon.
Verizon.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your input.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
And if I may just clarify for the record, actually, the green line that we were seeing, that was Finney Road, just to be clear.
That is Finney Road.
Yeah, it was not the easement, actually.
No,
That was
thank
Finney
you.
Road, yeah.
Right.
We have an issue with PG&E too, because they had a 40-foot right away from center line. They took another 50 feet out of my property to do their thing, and they were approved to do that. So they took down all my timber and stuff that was on my property, and we have another issue with that. But this is the issue right now. Okay. So I wish they'd get a hold of me, because we would like to go to court, but we're not able to with my finances. You can tell I've driven a lot of years, and so I didn't have time, but now I have time because nobody will hire me.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you
for
your time.
Okay, so I'm going to close. Do we have any more public input from anybody on Zoom?
I have no members of the public on Zoom for public comment.
Great. With that, I'm going to ask staff for any final remarks, and then any final remarks?
Liam Crowley, planning staff, nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. The applicant, any final remarks?
This is John Scandola, and I have no further comment.
And is Verizon online?
Yes, this is John Scandola, and I have no further comment.
Oh, okay, and did you hear your neighbor, what he is requesting you to get in touch with him?
Yes, yes, we have heard that.
Okay.
Yes, that's,
I hope that can happen. All right. No further thing from applicant. Now I'll ask the commission if they have any additional questions for staff or applicant.
None for me.
Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. The matter is now before the commission. And I invite a motion from Commissioner Babini.
I make a motion, by resolution of the Planning Commission, County of Mendocino, State of California, granting renewal of a use permit for an existing wireless communications facility.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Do we need to have the application number referenced in the motion?
No, I believe
Okay.
because you're adopting the resolution
Okay,
that
yeah.
has it referenced.
Okay.
Right.
I'll second.
All right. Can we have roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Babini,
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now I'm going to go to agenda item number 7, matters from staff. Do we have any matters from staff?
Nothing additional this afternoon, thank you.
All right. And then we're going to go from matters from commission. And I believe we had a matter at one.
I understood the commission wanted to talk about printed packets.
Oh, yes, thank you. It's a long meeting, you know, a lot. Yes. How can we do it so it's not a burden on you, but it helps us? And would it be, once we see our packages, we can just contact Jim for getting us the information? Is that?
I think since if I heard correctly, the commission was saying that there's times when you may not need printed packets or desire them, that you're able to sufficiently access the information online. However, there may be instances where you may want, for larger projects or projects with a complex nature to them, to be able to see printed packets. So my suggestion would be that as the agenda becomes available, that you would reach out to staff to ask us to please send you a packet as soon as possible, if that is what you desire for that particular meeting, or we can also make them available for pickup at our office locations.
And my question is, who do you want us to contact?
Please contact Jim Feenan, the Commission
go.
Services Supervisor. Thank you.
That's what I thought. I thought. And the one thing that would also be good, just for general, is if we had one set of, I mean, we do it here with which is fine, but at least one set available to pass around. But maybe we'll just leave it like what we said.
I will say,
if the individual commissioners need some printed version, we'll figure out. The coast folks will go to the coast to pick it up. You don't have to mail it.
certainly, we understand that. And, you know, also if there's a document that you would like to have available to you at the meeting, you may also request that we have a copy available for you when you arrive in the morning.
Okay, great. Do we have any other issues from the commission?
I had one question, just because I'm coming back to the Planning Commission post our COVID resolution for hybrid meeting or out in home meetings. I know that we have some issues with attendance potentially with people out of town and everything. Is it still an availability to do hybrid, or is that just gone now that the COVID resolution is gone?
So these meetings are hybrid meetings because the public is able to participate remotely. However, I believe you're asking about commissioners participating remotely. There's some limited circumstances. I'm going to let Deputy County Counsel speak to that.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, it is limited. There's emergency circumstances and just cause that could allow for certain commissioners to appear remote, but there is still a requirement for a quorum to be present in this location. So it really is more if someone wants to attend, but can't, but there's still at least 3 here. So limited circumstances, it could apply if someone wants to join remotely. We can discuss that in more detail after the meeting.
My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that since we have a quorum here, let's say if Marie Jones was not able to get here, but she could Zoom, she could participate.
Deputy County Counsel, Matt Kudrowski, it is not that simple. There have to be reasons for her participation remotely
You're
that
right.
have to be
But
established.
if she was ill, I meant, okay, or if there's a sickness?
There's certain parameters in terms of, I'm not sure how broad they are. There's medical emergency, there is contagious illness, so it's a little more detailed than necessarily how it works. But again, there would have to be the quorum here. There can't be a Zoom person to make quorum.
Right. Bottom line, we need quorum.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, it is even more complicated on that front. I believe you can use the reasons under a just cause reason twice, and it's kind of a variable figure for emergency circumstances. So if there's a desire to attend remotely, we'd like to hear that as early as possible so we can review that and get things prepared for the meeting.
Well, I really appreciate the clarity just because I am coming back to a very different format than when I was here previously, so I appreciate the guidance.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? So, all right. Any other matters from commission? Seeing none, I'll move on to an adjournment. Can I invite a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting today.
Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 1:15. Thank you very much.